Mortals! Hello! Actually, I might be a bit big for some reason. Hold on. Let me shrinken myself. Hello, 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 hello. Greetings and salutations. Is the Mystic Weave strong today? I don't think I've asked that on Twitch yet. Which is interesting because it's somewhat of a routine for me to ask. But anyhow, is the Mystic Weave strong today? Can you perceive my presence? Well, today, it's Dies Irae time. It's Dies Irae Amantes Amentes. Now, I cannot begin to tell you what just a fun little visual novel this is. And I'm very glad that I could still sneak these into my new schedule for Twitch, for the Twitch test week, which has been going very well so far. So, this might not be a stream for those who first seeing me, but I'll introduce myself anyway. You know, I am Carmine Phlegethon, a powerful cursed being, and today I will be presenting you a dramatic reading of this visual novel. So, data load. Yes, bros are best. Oh, I'm remembering how the last one ended. Oh, and it's so good. This is such a good game. Excellent, excellent. Let's start it up. Ooh. Other story, Die Morgen Dämmerung, unlocked. Footsteps echoed through the cold, dark hallway. It was the sole sound that occupied the entire auditory landscape. Nothing else could be heard. Oppressive silence and darkness. The owner of the footsteps had a candle in her hand, but it barely helped at all. The hallway was so narrow that two adults walking side by side would have likely bumped into each other. The light of the candlestick was no match for the darkness around it. A barely perceptible sigh interrupted the monotone of footsteps. Exasperated by the uselessness of the light, the woman momentarily considered getting rid of it altogether. She knew that the more she advanced, the darker it got. Whatever lay at the heart of the tomb-like hallway was responsible for generating this all-encroaching darkness. As such, it was small wonder that the candlelight had so quickly outlived its usefulness. Oh no! Oh, great. Not like this. No. The woman addressed her companion in a surprisingly carefree tone. As the light passed away to her side, it illuminated the face of... Why is everyone involved in my life involved in the supernatural in this visual novel? I can't even have a cute nun. I can't even have a cute nun that isn't involved with supernatural super soldiers from World War II Germany. This is my existence, mortals. Kei Sakurai. She offered no further protest, taking the candlestick in her hands without another word. Obviously, the action did nothing to improve the lighting conditions of the corridor. I wonder if... I'm speculating now. Kay nodded, raising an eyebrow. She brushed her hair up with a wry smile. Props to the... I always tend up interrupting them. Props to the kawaii kawaii. Kawaii kawaii. It's a very... I don't like ara voices being used for evil. It's a terrible power to use for evil.
Neo, あなたは分かっているの？シュピーネの件でおおよそは。そう。スワスチカは私たちの死でも開く。要は大量の魂をその場で散らしてしまえばいい。そういうことなの。
The deaths of hundreds of everyday people were substantially equal to the death of a single superhuman. Those who had not received enough of their master's favor were to be killed off and sacrificed. That would open a swastika as a result. The vice commander's substitute, Zarathustra, was meant to fill that role, to act as an executioner. The resurrection of supernatural war demons required an appropriate field of carnage to be enacted. Therefore, they needed an enemy. After all, a one-sided massacre of the weak and frail could hardly be considered a true battlefield.
人望のない副司令閣下の代替なら、まさに適任ということですか。見ようによっては、我々の仲間割れを防ごうとする慈悲深い処置とも言えますね。一度聞きたかったことですが、なぜ皆はそれほどまでに彼のことを憎むのかって
The woman looked down in self-mockery before turning to Cain.
いろいろとしか言えないわ。私たちは各々に彼から耐え難い仕打ちを受けている。魔導の薫陶を受けるにあたってそれまで培ってきた矜持を砕かれたというのも多少はあるけど、もっと別に個人的なことでみんなメルクリウスにはやられているのよ。例えばベイ、彼は望んだ相手と添い遂げることができないと言われたの。お前の人生は奪われ続けるだけだろう。
Yes, that's good. That's very good. I like Bay being bullied.
それはどういう。さあ、でもベイ自身には思うところがあるみたいでね。それを崩したがっている。この間もいいところであなたが邪魔をしたんでしょ。ああいうことが起きないように。
In other words, that sort of thing happened to him frequently. If that was really true, it did sound as though he was cursed, and having others pointed out most likely made it worse, like pouring salt into the wound. Were the other 11 similar in that regard then, if that was the case?
副資料閣下は計算づくで憎悪の対象になったのですね。あなた方もそれを分かっていながら、いや、分かっているだけに許せない。そういうこと。何にしても鼻持ちならない嫌な男よ。まるで何度繰り返しても私たちがそうとしかなり得ないと知っているような。だからもしかして誰が脱落するのかってことも知っているかもしれない。あなたもあまりフラフラしていると捨て駒にされて切られるわよ。それで
She allowed herself a brief pause, then softened her tone.
結局何をしに来たのかしら。私の心配じゃあないわよね。ならもしかして詮索は無用です。ただ私には私の理由があるので、あなたに同行する許可が欲しい。許可？生産杯芸家が見当たらない。そこであなたが狩猟代行補佐殿。
This expression, this surprise expression right here, top right, would be very cute if it weren't evil. If it were not evil, mortals.
次の一戦、私の同行を認めてほしい。返答は
Although the girl's words lacked the respect one ought to display towards a superior, the older woman did not appear to take offense. Rather, she tilted her head as if to ponder them. Now, Vel, you have a point and also not. Evil girls can be cute. This is a fact. Evil girls can be cute. We know this. We know this. We know evil girls can be cute. However, they're a bit of an obstacle. They're a bit of a thing to tackle. On account of said villainousness. It's not because I mean, when you know that the individual in question would kill you without a second thought, it introduces some interesting dynamics into the equation. Let's say that. Yes, yeah, it is cuteness. It is cuteness. Evil girls are cuter, but it's a kind of I mean, it depends on which direction she's brandishing it, really. I would very much like that, actually. Ohio, Shimada Tiger. Oh, if it's at me, then yes, it is a double-edged sword, because at one point, listen, it's a double-edged sword. Evil cute girls are a double-edged sword, because their cuteness is raised by the gap moe of evil, but also they might stab you and let you bleed out. And that's a problem. And that's a problem and a half, mortals. It's a real issue. She could guess her comrade's reasons, although whether or not she could accept them was another matter entirely. For the girl accompanying the woman on her task was...
あなたは偽善者だ、バビロン。
She's Babylon! She's Babylon. Never trust a... almost never, ever, 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 ever trust someone of the cloth in a Japanese game. I mean, being stabbed would be nothing to me, Shimada Tiger, but for someone of immortal persuasion, it could be an issue.
程度の低い気遣いならいらない。私がそんな子供に見えると。
I can't believe this game wouldn't give me a nun route. It sucks. I'm going to sulk about it. I'm going to sulk about it. 4 heroines, you couldn't put her in there. Okay. Of these two women, mortals, listen. Of these two women, one of them has a root. Okay, both of them are on the evil team. Alright, both of them are on Team Evil. Both of them are part of the antagonistic force. Which one do you think has a root? It's the one on the left, who sucks, and not the one on the right, who would be much better. That would be a much better and evil girl route. I don't... Leonhardt, why? Why do you deprive me? Listen, I can romance a nun if I want, Val.
まあ、あなたがいくつになっても、私。
Tempted to finish her sentence with an affirmative word, the woman ultimately chose not to. In actuality, she probably wouldn't have cared. What mattered was that the girl didn't get in the way.
とりあえず、彼を起こすには一晩くらいかかるだろうから、今夜は戻って休みなさいな。それからレオン、私と行動する間、あなたに殺人を禁じます。守れるかしら？
Kay was a bit daunted from having those odd conditions added into the mix. Knowing this group, they didn't give a damn about the pros and cons of killing people. She knew that much, and besides...
消せませんね。今からの我々はどれだけ殺すかという話になるわ。ええ。だから私の邪魔をするなということ。こちらの両場を荒らさないでほしいのよ。次のスワスチカは私と彼で開くから。あなたに分けてあげるものはないの。ついてくるのは自由だけど、横取りはしないでね。つまらない仲間割れはしたくないから。
Okay, so she's calling dibs.
わかりました。
Kay, somewhat sullen, shut her eyes and nodded.
そう。なら別にいいわ。私は行くから、言ったようにあなたは戻って休みなさい。じゃあ。バビロン。
Facing the woman's receding back, Kay attempted to say something, but...
いや、何でも。わがままを聞いてくれて、礼を言います。どういたしまして。ああ、それからついでに。
Okay, I just... Observe, though, observe. Great length blue hair, purple eyes, glasses, beauty mark under the eye. The visible thigh. You can't tell me that isn't justice. You can't. You can't, mortals. You just can't. There's no debate.
一ついいことを教えてあげるわ。あなたみたいな人にとって一番警戒しなくてはならない相手。
Alright.
マレリアとザミエル、この二人には気をつけなさい。覚えておくのね。
And with those words, the nun turned around and left. For a short while, Kay simply stood in place, listening to her fading footsteps.
バカバカしい。
She couldn't believe that woman.
偽善者だよね。相変わらず。
It's Rusalka's voice. Ah, you're just listening, Tiger. I getcha. Yeah, no. Picture a hot damn stick of dynamite of a nun with about shoulder length blue hair, glasses, a beauty mark under the eye, and also a habit, like dressed in a nun's habit that shows off the like full side thigh. It's pretty great. Oh, and for context, the other woman in this conversation was dressed in an SS uniform. Both of them now, because Rusalka's here. The small redhead had snuck up behind her at some point during the conversation. Kay didn't sense her presence, though the fact didn't particularly surprise her at this point.
Mareus.
Instead, she breathed an exasperated sigh.
つまらない冷やかしが目的なら、どうかよそを当たってくれ。
なにずいぶんツンケンしてるのね。
Oh, someone's PMSing here. Rusalka, please. I mean... You know what? I'm not even gonna comment. I feel it's rude for me to comment.
レオン、あなたはあいつについていくようだけど、学校はどうするのよ。
Like, I don't like Leon, but some things are too much. I don't want to be rude. I don't... Listen, I dislike Leon and Leonhardt and would kill her in a heartbeat. But some things are too rude.
別に。
It didn't matter. School was off until tomorrow, anyway. Once Kay said that and shrugged, Rusalka burst into laughter.
あら、じゃあ何？もし明日中に終わらなかったら？あなたが帰ってこなかった時、あそこは私の好きにしてもいいってわけ？
Don't mess with the school, Rusalka.
レオン、二頭を追う者は一頭も得ずよ。妙な色気を出してると貧乏くじ引いちゃうのからね。
そうかもな。
I don't think I've seen that face on Kay that often. Kay gave the redhead a dismissive snort.
大きなお世話だろ。お前に心配される覚えはない。
でもあなたはなんだか危なっかしい感じなのよね。バビロンだって忠告をしてたじゃない。どうせベイにもいろいろ言われてるんでしょ。ねえ、老婆心が鬱陶しいなら私が何とかしてあげようか。
You know, visual novels really are where seiyuu showed the most chops. Because with an anime, you so rarely get the sheer amount of voice lines that you get in a visual novel. Because there's so much more happening in a visual novel. An episode of an anime is like 20 minutes. Visual novels are hours and hours and hours and hours and hours. And it's all, like, they always deliver such stellar performances. I'm always quite enraptured.
何？
Basically what I'm saying is voice visual novels are great. What did she mean? Kay met this strange display from her normally insincere comrade with a blatant frown.
だからこれ以上うるさいことを言われないようにしてあげるって言ってるのよ。邪魔くさいんでしょ、そういうのが。
Babied. Oh, Kay really is a little baby compared to pretty much every other member.
なぜお前にそんなことをされなければいけない？
だって私 あなたの教育係みたいなものだもん。クリストフにもちゃんと話は通してるわよ。あなたは若いし、私たちとは違うからフォローしてやれって言われてるし。
Hey Meiji. So we're this is something I like to do on the regular. We're reading Dai's Irae, which is a visual novel. And as you can see, these are two of our antagonists right here, having a conversation. As you do. That's Leonhardt, or Kei Sakurai, on the left, and that's Rusalka on the right, also known as Malleus. There is a considerable amount of plot has happened before this, so please don't feel too intimidated.
例えば
そうね。
Rusalka gave a faint mocking smile, then stuck her finger out.
誓いを立てましょうか。今ここで。
Yeah, basically demon cultist Nazis.
誓い
そう言っておくけど、ただの口約束じゃないわよ。
Rusalka slowly pointed to her hands, feet, and flank before continuing. Those were the stigmata of the Longinus, a mark of submission engraved in all of them.
あなたのそれは私たちのものよりずいぶん軽い。マルキュリアが死んだ時に移植したって聞いてるけど、所詮クリストフの手際でしょ。彼を軽く見るつもりはないけど、
They have
アイドリ秘境から直接賜った私たちに比べれば意味も重さもちょっとお話にならないわ。
I don't like to talk over the Seiyu, but they have a mark on their flank. They have stigmata. As in basically, as far as I'm aware, it's what was cut into Jesus Christ when he was pierced by the spear of Longinus during the crucifixion. So they've got those, and they basically bleed in the presence of the Golden Beast, who's their head honcho.
つまり私が不忠だと。
砕いて言えばそういうこと。何しろあなたの束縛だけがゆるゆるのダルダルだし、だからあれこれうるさいことを言われるのよ。そこらへん今後のためにも私が締め直してあげようってわけ。
それはまた。
She was ready to dismiss the redhead words as nonsense, but quickly realized that Rusalka's rune was Northir's, binding. So she truly was the most experienced on that kind of field. The Reinhard from earlier was nothing more than an incorporeal illusion, unable to interfere with their world for more than a brief period. There was likely no way he would ever get involved in something this trifling until the swastikas were opened. So Rusalka's proposal did make sense in a way. Strengthening her discipline to fall in line with the rest of her comrades was not a bad call. Still...
あれ怖いの？
Kay knew what kind of person the witch in front of her was. Having this woman tamper with her body would be disgusting, and above all else, dangerous. But even so, I have no other choice, do I? There was nothing to be gained from defying her. Opposing such a logical suggestion would only worsen her own standing. Kay sighed and nodded.
好きにしろ。ただし制約の内容を明確にしておきたい。私がそれに同意しなければこの手の呪詛は成り立たないんだろ。
ええ、心配しなくても無茶な強制はしないわよ。
Every track on this visual novel soundtrack is a banger. Rusalka laughed cheerfully, then stuck out 2 more fingers.
まず一つ、同胞に対する殺害と傷害の意図および行為の禁止。
Oh, this is a new CG. It's Rusalka casting magic. It's very nice. Rusalka is also someone I would rather have a root than Kei Sakurai. She's much more my flavor of evil cute.
同意する。ただし同胞による殺害と傷害の意図 および行為にさらされた場合を例外とすること。
受諾する。ただし本制約はその類に含まれない。2つ、同胞を除くすべてのものに対し殺害と傷害の意図および行為を戸惑わない。
I simply mean new CG in that we haven't seen it before in this read-through. However, this is a remastered version of sorts. It's a re-release called Amentes Amentes.
同意する。ただしリザブレンナーの前においてのみ例外とすること。
受諾する。
Interesting. Babylon just talked to Kay about how she's not allowed to kill in the presence of Babylon, which is Lisa, Sister Lisa. And now that's being included in the contract here. Oh! Cutscene. Nice. Rusalka drew a complex symbol in the air, she said that. It appeared to be a magical seal, but Kay wasn't sure. And with a thump, Rusalka placed that finger in the area right below Kay's belly button, her womb.
3つ。清掃13騎士団国煙卓第1位ラインハルト・トリスタン・オイゲン・ハイドリヒに忠誠を誓い、すべての行動は彼の利となるよう心得ること。
同意する。
ジーク・ハイル。
And at that very moment, Rusalka's finger plunged right into Kay's womb.
ノリネ・タンゲ。
The sudden and intense rush of agony sent Kay to her knees against her will. There was no doubt that Rusalka had planted something into her womb, racking Kay with indescribable pain. Rusalka looked down at her, laughing pleasantly.
ねえレオン、あなたって少女よね。
Asking if she's a virgin is a kind of a personal question, Rusalka. You can't just ask someone that. You can't just ask someone that. Ah.
何？
いや、だったら面白いなと思っただけ。とにかく今私が打ち込んだそれ生きてるからね。制約破ると中からお腹食い破っちゃうわよ。
The pain was already fading and turning into a burning ache. Though she could feel the foreign substance in her abdomen, Kay slowly rose to her feet. She then retorted with scorn.
汝我に触れんと欲するなかれか。なるほど。お前らしくて趣味が悪い。
So basically, this is Crestworms 2 Electric Boogaloo fitting for weakest heroine.
何よ、私なりの気遣いだったのにひどくない？危なくなってもギリギリで回避できる可能性を残してあげたんだから感謝してほしいわね。
だからそれが
余計なお世話だって。ああ、はいはい、もういいわよ、大和なでしこさん。これだから処女って面倒くさくて嫌いなのよね。
Yep, I'm talking about Fate Crestworms. Good. Ooh. Very nice catch, Meiji, yeah. I'm talking about Sakura's Crestworms, but I don't want to get into too much of too in-depth about it on account of spoilers. But, oh, I can't believe Rusalka hates virgins. Mortals, I can't believe Rusalka hates virgins. Oh, no, no, not like this.
じゃあまあ、ともかくそういうことで。あなた、バビロンと組むんだったら、月曜までに戻ってこないと、私が学校もらうからね。
Rusalka waved and turned to leave. Or so it seemed, but then she turned back around.
暇ならちょっと覗きに来ない？割と乙女力のレベルアップに役立つかもと思ったり。
帰れ。
Kay hurled that one phrase at Rusalka, ignoring her. The witch merely cackled and proceeded to melt away into the shadows.
役立つかもだと。
Ridiculous. It just made her feel repulsed, irritated, and pitiful. Like hell she'd want to see something like that.
ベアトリス。
Left alone in the darkness, Kay stared out past the new darkness, muttering that name to herself.
カインはまだきっとあなたを覚えている。
What does that mean? It'll probably get
偽善
explained
者か。
in this chapter. Lisa Brenner's lips curled into a bitter smile as she recalled the words of a girl only a fifth of her age. Indeed, it was just as she had said. She was a hypocrite. She spoke and acted like someone of good faith on the surface, but deep down she was nothing more than a heretic. The girl knew it well. It wasn't like Lisa had been acting in front of her, but it was also true that there was little meaning to words of virtue not backed by action. After all, she was about to stain herself deeply with immorality this very moment. Her vision was that of pure darkness. She had no clue how much she'd walked ever since parting with the girl, but it probably hadn't been that much. Her sense of distance had lost all meaning, and the several dozen meter long labyrinthine hallway felt 1,000 times longer. Lisa breathed a small sigh as she felt herself touching a metal door.
There's a girl we went to.
Labyrinthine. Okay. Labyrinthine. That had likely been the spell to unlock the door, for it opened with a solemn sound. The putrid stench of rot inside stuck in her nose. It was so viscous it felt as though it had merged with the surrounding darkness itself, becoming an integral part of this place. It was hardly surprising. The last time anyone had been there was 11 years ago. And not once had this entryway been unlocked since then. Lisa silently stood in the center of the room, then spread her arms and shut her eyes, making her look like a sacrifice being offered at an altar.
さあ、いらっしゃい。
And with those words aimed at no one, the darkness around her began to squirm in concert.
天が雨を降らすのも、霊と体が動くのも。
So that the heavens move and spirits and bodies stir themselves.
神は自らあなたのもとへ赴き、幾度となく死者でもって呼びかけ
God himself has leaned down to you and calls to you through countless messengers. I should read the text too, because it's written in it has English above it, and is also written in German, and is voiced in Japanese, so that's 3 languages. Okay. Das sich die Himmel regen und Geist und Körper sich bewegen. Gott selbst hat sich zu euch geneigt und ruft durch Boten und Saal. Da equals D. Dass sich die Himmel regen und Geist und Körper sich bewegen, Gott selbst hat sich zu euch geneigt und ruft durch Boten und Saal. I don't speak German! Okay, bewegen. Bewegen. Okay, so W in German is V. Well, that's rather confusing. I thought Germany invented the typewriting face. Why is it? I thought the printing press was like the printing press plates that solidified the alphabet were German. Why is WV? At that very moment, she could feel the presence of something condensing and taking shape. The oppressive density around her materialized, taking on weight, flesh, in the shape of a human. Vel, please never ever ever look at my early Dies Irae VODs where I may or may not completely butcher more German. Something sinister that had been confined in the deepest darkness. Its dark, thick, giant arms reached out towards the nun's back.
起きよ。そして前へ。
Oh no.
私の愛の晩餐。
Rise up, come to my feast of love, or Auf kommt zu meinem Liebesmahl. Auf kommt zu meinem Liebesmahl. Now that was a sound and a half. And with a groan that sounded like it came from the bowels of the earth itself, the thing's giant arms wrapped tightly around the nun. And that's the stinger for, or rather the preamble to Chapter 7, Death Indra. We're really in it now, models. In the end, it looked like I had been refusing to see everything that had been inconvenient for me yet again.
まあお前の悪い癖だわな。人を見る目なんかねえんだから、もっと世の中疑ってかかれよ。
It's Shiro. I don't really have a use for rudimentary German, Vel. It's never really come up. Ah, Meiji. This Shiro, much like pretty much every Shiro I meet, is an absolute mad lad. A fantastic guy. 10 out of 10. When it comes to reading visual novels and Shiros, they're always such bangers.
この時期、街で見かけたよそ者なんか怪しすぎるぜ。それも外人。どう見てもアウトだろうが。
Oh, he's so cool. He's so cool, models. I had no comeback to Shiro's teasing. I had completely failed to realize. Wir kann Deutsch zusammen sprechen? Wir kann Deutsch zusammen sprechen? Yeah, wir kann Deutsch zusammen sprechen. Ah, okay, that's what it means. I actually probably shouldn't read stuff that just the chat posts in German. I might read something yab. You want a shirt that is only buttoned up through belt buckles? You have good taste. Nomura would like you. It's a rule of cool. Who Valeria Trifa truly was. Nor the implications of that revelation. Shiro seemed to have traded words with that priest as well. Judging from everything I'd heard from him, it had happened on the same night I first encountered Wilhelm. I mean, it's a jacket, it's a vest. He's got a shirt on under it. Yeah, I know, Meiji. It's honestly great. Ich habe... oh no. Ich habe eine sehr lange Schlange in mein Hose. What does that mean, Val? Don't just laugh at me. Don't just laugh at me. Explain. What does that mean? What does that mean? What is a very long line? Vel. How dare you? You took advantage of my kindness. You took advantage of my kindness, Velek. You took advantage of my kindness, my innocence, my naivete, and my curiosity. I'm very disappointed. I'm very disappointed. How could you make me say something like that? I'll never get married now. I'll never be able to get married now. I'm impure. Honestly.
なんかこうできすぎてるよな。俺とお前あの時ほぼ同時刻にやられてたんだぜ。それで
We both went through the same experience. That fight in the park was a total defeat on my end, no matter how one decided to spin it. Though I had made it out of there alive, it felt more like they let me live. We were still too weak, a pair of losers who had no choice but to run away so we could live to fight another day. That described us perfectly right now. I passed out just as I got back to this club, and when I woke up, I found that I'd been sleeping for a whole day. It couldn't get more pathetic than that. I'd recovered physically thanks to the rest, but the mental scars left behind wouldn't fade so easily. Shiro was talking shit as always, but I didn't feel like picking a fight. I had no time for crap like that.
かすみ
あ
かすみをどうにかしないとやばい。ほっといたらあいつ明日は学校に行っちまう。
I planned to get rid of Rusalka and Sakurai by the end of the weekend, but in the end I failed to beat either of them. Now that our battle had begun for real, school was too dangerous. A fight would likely break out if I went there, but I couldn't guarantee Kasumi's safety if I skipped it. Oh? You don't like angry Carmine? Hmm? 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 You don't like me looking down on you? Well, I'll let you off the hook this once. In that case, tonight was my last chance to...
拉致ってことが片付くまで監禁か？いいぜ別にうちのもんらにやらせても。でもよ。
言うな。分かってる。
He wanted to tell me that I should go and tell Kasumi everything, even if we didn't force her into hiding. But that was out of the
あいつに
question.
なんて説明すりゃいいか分かんねえよ。それにお前とも会わせたくない。
なんで？
To explain, Meiji, Kasumi is, okay. Kasumi is their childhood friend and also best girl. She's a tomboy that does kendo.
自分の胸に聞いてみろよ。とにかくそういうことだから。
Well, I mean, the alternative is letting her go to school. Obviously, it's a friendly kidnapping. It's to protect her. They'd give her all the amenities. Also, Shiro just doesn't give a flip.
ああはいはい。なんか一方通行な友情だなおい。俺の人脈当てにしといてこっちにメリットなさすぎっつうかなんつうか。
I like that they, like, the very first time we were introduced to Ren, we were also introduced to Shiro. And then they just kind of, like, sat on him for ages. So that when he's been reintroduced, he's so cool. He's still so cool. I was waiting for him that whole time. There was no need for him to remind me of my own impudence. But I had no choice at the time.
俺もダメ、お前もダメ。だったらかなり手荒になるぜ。バカスミはあれだしよ。うちの連中も育ち悪いから。
Bakasumi. Yeah, it's only got one sleeve. Asymmetrical.
おい。
わかってるって。けどなレン、労働には報酬がいるだろうよ。なんで俺がお前の頼みをすんなり聞かなきゃいけねえのよ。
Shiro flashed a smirk as he stretched out his right hand.
金かよ。
まあ それは実行する連中にくれてやれよ。俺にはもっと別のもんよこせ。
If he doesn't want cash, does he want hand holding? Oh boy. I had no clue what he was implying. Just then.
その子ちょっと俺に貸せよ。
Oh, Shiro pointed right next to me. Oh no.
はい。
Oh no. Sitting there was a girl who hadn't opened her mouth even once throughout this whole thing. Yes, this is my week of trying out Twitch. I rather like it so far. It's pretty nice. I felt very welcome on it. Though it's interesting to do regular Dai's like it's like this is Dai's irae streams have been like a regular stream for me since starting, and they've always been on YouTube, so it's interesting to be doing it on Twitch.
そうそう、彼女マリちゃん、この子面白いよな。正直興味あるんだわ。
Ah, Shiro likes blondes.
お前な。
I had no idea what he was thinking, but I couldn't accept those conditions. Shiro made a big show of frowning when he heard my refusal.
なんだお前、気が多いにも程があるだろ。ハーレム大王でも目指してんのかこれ。
Yes, like a shonen protagonist, he will become the harem king.
ハーレム？
ああ、こいつな、女は全部自分のものだって言ってんだよ。他の男とは口も聞くなって。
Oh, it's all good. It's all good. It's all good, my friend. I don't want to spoil something for someone. You do not have to be watching me in the moment for me to appreciate you. So please, fret not. I will see you when next we meet. That happened with that also happened a lot with Persona. That happened especially with Persona 5 Strikers or Scramble. But I don't want to spoil things for people when I stream them. I don't want people to feel obligated to watch me, even if I'm playing something that they want to play themselves, and they don't want to be spoiled. Because I really do value spoilers. But yes, all the girls for himself, none of them talking to other guys.
私はレンのものだけど。
あ
Ooh la la. I really wished Marie could have tried to read the mood a bit. Though I suppose that was asking for too much.
あーっと、ちょい待て。そうなわけ？
違う。
おい、なんかショック受けてるぞ。
意味が違うんだよ。
どんな風に？
She means she's my sentient weapon of a guillotine. He expected me to answer that?
いいか、俺とマリーは。
体と体を一つ。
だから。
Okay, I'm just gonna replay that because I
体
skipped
と
it.
体を一つにする関係なのです。
Jesus Christ. She wasn't technically wrong though.
つまりセフレ。
Oh, what a question, Shiro. That's it. Hit list priority change. Him first, Nazi freaks second. Oh my... Oh, Meiji, this must be so disorientating. I'm so sorry. Oh.
レンは私を一番うまく使ってくれる人。
Oh,
それ
the
が気持ちよ
entendre.
くて、
The
私はとても
entendre.
嬉しいの。
I'm dying.
だからごめんね。レンがダメだって言うなら、シロとは話せない。
Shiro scratched his head, made an exasperated shrug, and looked at me with eyes mixed with all sorts of emotions.
お前 すげえ調教師だな。
レイは上手だよ。
え、マジ？例えば
That was a... I was not expecting the second attack. No, I'm sorry, Meiji. This is very real.
お前少し黙れ。
Why did the conversation turn so incomprehensible? Maria sighed. This idiot had not even the slightest hint of urgency.
マリー、別に誰と話してもいいけど、ただちょっと。
ちょっと。
I just wish she'd choose her words more carefully, but telling her that wouldn't do any good. Anyway, if I didn't let her talk to anyone, she would be forced to be little more than an ornament in the room, but letting her speak was just asking for trouble. Seriously, this whole situation was bad on my heart. I wanted her to become used to our world little by little, so I tried to keep her formed as much as I could, but... Well, oddly enough, constantly maintaining her physical body wasn't anywhere as tiring as I thought. I had no clue if it was just that easy, or if Marie was a special case. In the end, having found myself at a loss as to how I should have expressed all that, I pat Marie on the head with a troubled smile. Anyway.
シロ、別にお前がマリーと話したいって言うなら構わない。
This weirdo was just a purely bad influence, but he also had a talent for expanding others' horizons. To explain. Marie is a special case in that she is basically she's a sentient Arnab. Basically, everybody has a... Listen. Basically, everybody involved in the supernatural, like our buddy Ren here, has a power called an Arnab. And Ren's is that his arm is a guillotine, and that guillotine is Marie here. And she's someone who is from the period in French history when they were doing a lot of beheadings. And she was beheaded, and she's a pure soul. Correct. As far as I'm aware, not everyone's power is takes a sentient form. Like Leonhardt's is just a sword. So during battle, Marie turns into a guillotine on Ren's arm. I had no idea what he was thinking, but maybe it wouldn't be so bad for Marie to know even a guy like him. Oh yeah, nah. But sentient weapons are great though. Because, I mean, if you've ever, it's like Soul Eater. I really like Soul Eater. And it's like that, kinda, in Marie's case.
けどお前白々しいんだよ。
Sentient weapons are cool. People that can transform into weapons are also cool. Or maybe he was acting so precisely because he knew. Shiro saw me fight with his own eyes. He knew exactly what kind of being Marie was. And if he continued to show interest in her regardless.
ハセとか言うな。マリーは物じゃない。
As I glared up at him from the sofa, Shiro sounded a meaningful laugh. Sounded a meaningful laugh.
OK、失言だったみたいだな。タイはなかったんだが、まあいいや。言い直そう。彼女に興味がある。少し話したいんだが、別にいいだろう。
俺じゃなくてマリーに言えよ。
だな。どうだよ、マリーちゃん。
私は。
By the way, real talk. I like that they're using Marie's closer up sprite shot and Shiro's far away one to indicate the distance between the characters. Marie is next to Ren, and Shiro is further away.
えっと
I just noticed that. At first she was bewildered, but
いいよ。
決まりだな。商談成立。
Shiro whistled, then took Marie's hand and lifted her to her feet.
じゃそういうことで。
おい言っとくけど、
ああ分かってるって。口説いたりしねえから。
いやそうじゃなくて、
He had probably forgotten the first topic.
霞のこと頼むぞ。
おう任せとけ。丁重にお越し願うよ。
He's so cool, he's so cool. After wrapping his arm around Marie's shoulder, he started making off for another room. Is he really gonna be okay?
おい
ああもうしつけえな。いちいち何なんだよこのハリムだよ。
霞をここに連れてくる役、本庄には頼めないのか。あいつなら女同士だし。
あ
Shiro turned around and pointed to the room's monitor with his
ああい
thumb.
つは今 PC に囲まれていろいろガチャガチャやってるよ。もともとそっち系が専門だからな。
Oh, she's a nerd.
やることないならお前あいつのとこ行ってろよ。情報収集は大事だし結構役に立つはずだぜ。ただし手出すなよ。あれは俺のだから。
あのな。
Had to fulfill his stupidity quota.
んじゃしばらく嫁の交換っていうことで。
Shiro ignored my exasperation and gave me a smile, then opened the door and went through it with Marie. But just before disappearing into the corridor, he suddenly stopped and spoke up, his back still turned to me.
なあレン、
ん
霞を連れてくるのは別にいい。お前にとっちゃ兄弟みたいなもんだしよ。他の連中がどうなろうがあいつだけはって、そういう気持ち共感はできんが理解はできる。けどお前氷室先輩はどうすんだよ。
My heart began to race at that name.
捨てちまうか。別にいいぜ。俺にとっちゃどうでもいい。
He's right though, we can't ditch Himuro.
ただ言ったよな。お前人を見る目ねえんだからよく考えろってよ。
Himuro can't be evil. Surely not Himuro. I couldn't just ignore things I felt were inconvenient to me anymore. There wasn't a shred of truth to be found in neatly beautified hopes, or rather, delusions. I knew that. He didn't need to remind me.
判断材料がまだ足りないならなおさらエリーと話しとけ。連中がどういうもんかそうすりゃお前もよくわかる。じゃまた後でな。言うの遅くなったけどせっかく一緒に遊べるんだから楽しく行こうぜ。
Yes, let's have some fun. Let's go to an arcade. Let's hit up an arcade and pick up some chicks. Shiro!
シロ
But Shiro didn't wait for me to finish, shutting the door. His footsteps, along with Marie's, soon grew faint. He was completely right. I wasn't good at reading people. I was fixated on maintaining the status quo and didn't notice changes around me. That was why he, Kasumi, and Himuro were deviating from the relationships I wanted to have with them. But even so, after all was said and done, the times we had shared were no illusions or lies, right? Though I'd abandoned false hopes, I didn't feel like denying our pasts too. Whatever Himuro was, she was still my... I mean, the first half, maybe. I would very much be interested in going to an arcade with the bros, but just you know, just there to hang out, not to pick up chicks. Do a couple matches of whatever fighting games they've got, maybe do some DDR, play some pinball. It'd be fun, it'd be blast. I wish I could go to an arcade. There's no arcades. There's no arcades I can go to. I punched the wall, causing a part of it to collapse. Before, that would have broken my fist. Now, though, I felt practically no pain at all. I didn't regret gaining this body. But still, deep down, a small part of me wished to feel pain. Oh, they're great, Mel.
ああ、いらっしゃい。待ってたよ。
Afterwards, after taking a few wrong turns and getting lost, I eventually somehow made it to Honjo's
意
room.
外にレン君って方向音痴だよね。ここからずーっと見てたけど、なんか行ったり来たりして、ネズミっぽかったわ。
Oh, a board game pub sounds cool.
大きなお世話だ。
I made a flat response to Honjo's barrage of teasing. This was probably their so-called control room. In other words, the place where they could keep an eye on all the other rooms through a number of monitors. I mean, when it comes to being stingy, I get that because, yeah, you can end up spending a lot in tokens, but it's a really fun experience. So for me, it's always been worth the price. The monitors themselves served as the solitary source of light around me, illuminating the dark room. At my feet, I spotted a massive jumble of strange cables, each a different color and size. Oh, you've never done laser tag? Laser tag's fun. I've done laser tag. I've never done paintball, but I've done laser tag. I've been, there was a point in time, mortals, where, I was playing laser tag for a school event as a child. It was a field excursion to play laser tag for all the students. I was a small kiddo then, and it was capture the flag outdoor laser tag, and I got my leg stuck in an embattlement in part of the sea, you know, in part of the the terrain, the buildings, and okay, what happened was the assistant principal, the deputy principal, the second in command principal, the second, the number two to the big honcho, to the head honcho, the vice principal, yes. The vice principal. Now, he saw that I had my, he was on the other team, and I was like, help, I've got my leg stuck, I'm scared. And he didn't like me very much, so he just shot me and went on his merry way. Oh. Yeah, no. He was a jerk. I didn't like him. I actually ended up leaving that primary school because he would have been teaching my class next year. And I knew that because he didn't like me, that I would have had I would have had an absolute, literal hell of a year. Was I wearing an eye patch back then too? No. I had yet to acquire the all-seeing eye, that which sees the world. So no. I wasn't tech illiterate per se, but being in a room chock full of equipment I couldn't really understand still made me feel somewhat I wasn't tech literate per se, but being in a room chock full of equipment I couldn't really understand still made me feel somewhat uneasy. I have not, no. That is something I have not revealed.
その辺かけなよ。私んとこ来た理由は分かってるし、ちょっと待ってれば面白いもの見せてあげる。
I mean, guys gotta have some secrets, right? She faced an odd yet absurdly huge tower-like object, most likely a computer, then began typing away at her keyboard. She looked over her shoulder at me with a cigarette between her lips. Only the rhythmical moving of her fingers penetrating the silence.
もう少しかかるから、暇ならそこのモニターでも見てるといいよ。ほら、バカと天然がじゃれ合ってる。会話も聞きたいならこれどうぞ。
Yeah, she's pretty great. Aesthetics-wise. Okay, listen. The all-seeing eye can see literally everything in the universe because it sees through to the heart of the world. So technically it can, because it can see everything. Technically it can see through clothing. That doesn't mean that I would ever use it for that. Understand this? Understand? She held out some headphones. Shiro and Marie were being displayed on the monitor Honjo was pointing at. As for what they were doing, well, how to put it, they were having a friendly chat while playing Cat's Cradle.
何話してる？
What's Cat's Cradle?
エッフェル塔の難易度がどうとかこうとか。あと実物のエッフェル塔は世界三大がっかりに数えられるくらいしょぼいらしいけどマジなのかとか。
Ah, it's a card game I've never played.
はあ？世界三大がっかりってマーライオンとかじゃなかったっけ？
あいつはどうでもいいこと知ってるようで、その大半が間違ってんだよ。わざと言って嘘を教えようとしてる線もあるけど。
But I was thinking, how could you make that a two-player experience? I took off the headphones to get away from the boundless stupidity. Partly because the conversation they were having was dumb beyond belief, but there was also the fact that I'd never been a fan of eavesdropping to begin with. Hell, why was he even talking to Marie about the Eiffel Tower in the first place? Because she was French? Given just how crazy the circumstances of it were, I hadn't told him about Marie's upbringing. There was no way Marie would know about the Eiffel Tower, given it was built to commemorate the centennial anniversary of the turbid era Marie grew up in the middle of.
ほんと真面目だね、レン君は。あいつがあることないことでたらめ教え込み出したらどうするの？
後で何話したか聞いて必要なら修正するさ。それに今はそんなことどうでもいいだろう。
はいはい、そうだったね。あと少しでいけそうなんだけど、これめんどいな、くそ。なかなか性格悪いっつか。
Oh, you got me, Ellie, you got me. I really thought you were done talking. And I started talking. What do you mean card instead of card? I don't understand. What would I be saying other than card? How do you want me to say it? Card. Cad. Card? I don't understand. It's card. Everyone says card. Explain the way that it is said that is not card. Like card. Card. So you're saying you pronounce it card. 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 That's so weird. Ugh. Yes, no. It's Marie. It's not Marie Antoinette. It's not Marie Antoinette, but her name is Marie. Oh, wait. Wait. Hello. What how interesting. Actually, this is how interesting. How was your stream? How was your stream? Thank you for the raid. It's good to see you. That's interesting because your field is linguistics, isn't it? And this is the only stream type I do in which linguistics takes any sort of role outside of being bombarded with with random languages and Battle Chef Brigade. But yes, thank you. Contrary to her irritated words, Honjo sounded a carefree whistle as she continued tapping away at her keyboard. I figured she was...
ハッキングだろそれ。
ん？まあそんなようなもん。
In other words, she was openly committing a crime, and I had an inkling as to what she was looking for. Ah, Dice Irae, the poem earlier today. That actually, I'm pretty sure the poem actually does pop up in the, it has popped up so far in this VN. It does like to use both Latin and German that I butcher when I read it. I actually butchered some German just earlier in this stream. It was her skills that probably got Shiro caught up in this whole mess.
なあ。
ん？
お前 なんでシローなんかとつるんでるんだ？
いや、なんでって言われてもね。
Although honestly, I'm honestly glad it doesn't show up too much. But yes, I guess I should say when somebody raids, but we're reading Daizare. It's a visual novel. Honjo smirked at the question. Honestly, I could only say she had a bad taste in men. I was aware that I myself had gone in a bad direction, but at least I was more normal than that guy.
きっかけとかは？
別にあいつが病院脱走した時たまたまその場にいたからってだけ。なんか面白いやつだったし、そのまま拾って帰ったの。
This game can be a hoot sometimes.
ここはあいつと知り合うずっと前から私の遊び場。レイ君も少しは見当ついてたんじゃない？
まあ、それは。
I didn't have any proof up until that point, but now that she said it, I finally understood. I knew her name was familiar from somewhere.
本庄総合病院だったな、確か。お前、あそこの娘なのか？
Ooh! She's the daughter of the owners of the Honsho General Hospital,
おーいえ。
which is, I think, where we started.
なかなか鋭いね。
That's where we started after me and Shiro, or rather Ren and Shiro, beat each other to a pulp.
Oh yes, oh yes, oh yes, oh yes.
Oh
な
yes.
かなか鋭いね。
Oh yes. Oh yes. Oh yes. Honjo boasted as she typed away on the keys. Looked like I was right, but could a girl like this really have been the daughter of a doctor?
学校は行ってるのか？
うん、休みがちだけどね。高徳女子だよ。
高徳っておま。
My vision grew dark for a moment. That was the #1 super elite girls' school in Suwahara. The students were supposed to be all prim and proper, greeting each other with a good day to you and stuff.
やだね。そんな目で見ないでよ。
I wonder if
学校といえじゃ。
I wonder if good day to you in this here is Gokigenyo? Gokigenyo? I watched a lot of Assault Lily in the last season of 2020. And they would all say Gokigenyo? Gokigenyo? When greeting each other.
そっちの方がはるかに立ち悪いと思うけどな。
そう？私は私なりに親とか友達とか大事にしてるよ。でも私が楽しいと思うのはなんでかこういうことだから。それに付き合えない感じの人には黙っておくね。私は変身ヒーローで、昼は本庄さん、夜はエリー。誰でもそういうところがあるんじゃない？シロもかすみちゃんも、それからヒムロって先輩も。
Everybody's got a dark side.
人間なんてそんなもんでしょ。だからあんまりショック受けない。
やっぱりお前、全部最後まで聞いてたんだな。
I mean, it's probably just the massive disconnect between Prim and Proper Girls Academy and actual criminal mastermind hacker smoking.
ま、早朝も趣味だし。
Honjo winked at me. It was right then that the monitor of the computer she'd been playing around with began to change.
そんな感じで雑談おしまい。
Juicy, juicy, juicy. Ooh.
いいもの見せてあげるから、ここから真面目な話を始めようか。
What's this? The mysterious program strings disappeared and were replaced by an image. Upon the screen, I saw none other than...
私はこれを見るの2回目だけど、ほんとバカみたいな額の賞金で笑えてくるよ。本人が言うには全員取ったら戦車の1万台くらい買えちゃうって話だけどさ。
Honjo narrowed her eyes, lowered her voice, and translated the English on the screen in the calm tone of an instructor. The text on screen was the personal data of those bastards, the Longinus Dryzen Orden, the Knights of the Holy Lance.
ヴィルヘルム・エーレンブルグ
1917年7月10日にドイツ・ハノーバーで生まれる。
Survivor of the Nazis, Last Battalion. The words dead or alive danced on the LCD.
27年9月、父親を射殺し、母親であり姉であるヘルガー・エレンブルグを強姦殺人。少年院に送致されるも同年12月に脱獄。
Was sent to a reform school from which you... Okay.
その後も強盗、強姦、放火、殺人を繰り返すが、41年に後の SS 特別連隊ディルレワンガーの一員となり、翌年2月のパレチザン総統選で戦果を挙げる。
What I want to know is
こ
why
れによっ
the...
て罪は免責。
What I want to know is why the Axis lost in this timeline, considering that all these supernatural, like, sorcerers were fighting for Germany.
しかし44年のワルシャワ放棄戦において市民、敵兵、同胞を問わず虐殺。街路の端から端まで串刺しにして晒す。公的にはそれで粛清されたとなってい
I
る。
don't know about that. I feel like magic may beat gun. I feel it may have a real opportunity to beat gun. Especially gun magic. Imagine not learning gun magic, mortals. You want a gun? Summon up a gun with some gun magic. There you go, you've got a gun. Want to add some bang to your get some bang for your buck for your bullet? Gun magic. Enchant the bullets. Be a gun mage, everyone. Be a gun mage. Be cool. Be super cool and rad. Be a gun mage. I may or may not have the power to summon a gun. I'm not typically a gun wielder, but I may or not be able to do that.
45年のベルリン市街戦時に目撃情報あり。その他70年のベトナム、82年のアフガン、85年のイラクなど各地の戦場でその存在を確認されており、最も新しいのが91
Yeah,
年の湾岸戦争、
I'm honestly in the camp of
砂
like the
漠の
Allies
検
had
索戦に
sorcerers,
おいてである。
which would be cool. Can you imagine like a World War II era American military sorcerer?
とまあありがちだけど、いわゆる戦場のオカルトだね。なんでもこいつ兵隊世界じゃ伝説になってるみたいよ。いわく白い顔の SS を見たらとにかく逃げる。何があっても戦ってはいけない。どう？少しは参考になったかな？
Honjo gazed at the monitor as she languidly asked her question. I was honestly disgusted.
まだ詳しく知りたいなら翻訳かけてプリントアウトしてあげるよ。
いや、もういい。
Correct. There is some apparently there was some magical involvement in both world wars in the Harry Potter setting, but most of the cool, interesting lore is unexplored. Oh no, Meiji. You know what I love? Urban fantasy, like urban magic. This kind of stuff, like with the like Nasu's works and this kind of stuff. Urban fantasy is honestly so cool, and yet you don't see it nearly enough. I want to play like urban fantasy JRPGs more. I mean, like for modern setting, like you can get like there's Persona and stuff like that, but that's not magic. That's not urban fantasy. It's just supernatural. Yeah, it is mostly in visual novels. A couple of young adult novels as well. But there needs to be more cool urban fantasy. I want to see a detective. I want to see like a modern PI with lighting a cigarette with fire spell. A Wolfenstein Harry Potter crossover just now. I mean, isn't that basically what this game is? Hearing those bastards pass would just make me feel so disgusted my internal organs would rot. I knew information was important, but there were also things better left unheard.
一人ずつピックアップしなくていいから、分かってる範囲のメンバー構成を教えてくれよ。顔写真があるなら、それだけでもいい。
Vale, yes, it's true that smoking is so cool, but like also it's not good for you in the real space. I just admire it and just admire smoking in anime characters.
そうじゃあざっといくけど、ヴィルヘルム・エーレンブルグ、ルサルカ・シュベーゲリン、バレリア・トリファ、ロート・シュピーネ、それからベアトリス・キルヒアイゼンはもう死んでるみたいで、
Beatrice must have been Valkyrie.
その抜け番が桜井圭。こいつらが高額の賞金首だってことは OK？
It seemed that was what Honjo was talking about. There was a big price to be had for bringing in their heads. But that thought only served to make me feel even worse. Regardless of the reason or the target's identity, I just wasn't fond of murder for money. I knew the internet had these kinds of sites, but this was the first time I'd ever actually seen one. What? It does? In fiction, maybe.
それ、どこのアングラサイトだよ。
I couldn't hide the irritation in my
ここ
tone.
だ。
は？
The UNs!
だから国際連合 WW2 の戦勝国様、地球大統領府とかバカっぽい
You
言い方
know,
をしても
you're saying the victorious nations of World War II, but aren't all three main Axis countries part of the UN at this point in time?
そこの人らにとっちゃ意地で抹殺しておきたい亡霊なんだよ、こいつらは。
Maybe like not the core members, but still.
だから当然この情報だって簡単に閲覧できるものじゃない。骨と金とその他いろいろ裏技使わないと見れないよ。
お前一般人じゃないのかよ。
一般人。
実はただの一般人じゃなかったり。
一般人。Honjo produced a cynical smile, cigarettes still in her mouth. I heard she was good at these things, but it looked like she had an even more surprising skill set than I thought. Being able to hack into the UN's database wasn't just something any old script kiddie could do. Oh, imagine being a script kiddie instead of a true, proper elite hacker. Geez, she and Shira really were a match made in hell, weren't they?
でも私が見れたのはこの
No, no, it's Script Kitty.
プラス個人一人の6人だけ。
It's Script Kitty.
こ
It's
れじゃ
it's a
全然
hacker.
足りないよね。シロから聞いたけど見たんでしょ、連中の頭。
Script Kitties are hackers that just are basically amateurs and just use scripts that other people have written. So they're not really doing any original hacking on their own. I'm not even a script kiddie. I can't hack. I'm terrible with technology. I'm amazed I can get anything to work on any sort of device at all. I couldn't answer her right away. It wasn't my intention to play dumb. Rather, my brain was simply trying hard not to remember. Reinhardt. No, out of the question. Way out of our league. The guys shown on the screen were like kittens compared to him. And I bet there were more mind-boggling monsters lurking out there too. They must never be allowed to resurface. Those guys, feared even by Spine, their own comrade, were like nuclear weapons. If they came back to pick a fight, it'd be all over. We couldn't beat them. The Obsidian Round Table's commander, the vice commander, and their 3 battalion commanders.
レン君、とりあえず何考えてるかは顔から想像できたけど、ちょっとシャレにならなすぎるのが何人かいる。オッケー、それはいいんだよ。 勝てないやつと戦う必要はないし、勝負しないなら、そいつらの出番を封じるように立ち回ればいい。問題はそういうのが一体何人いるかってこと。
Yeah, Meteor would basically be a nuke.
ねえ、教えてよ。まだ私らと組むのに抵抗があるのかもしれないけど、そんなのがいるなら好き嫌いも言ってらんないでしょ。
You'd actually get you get all these if there were war mages, you get so many flavors of devastation. Warrior, mage, or rogue in terms of the three main archetypes. Ah, you ask me this question. You ask me this question. Would I be warrior, mage, or rogue? I choose D, none of the above. I'm a cleric. I'm a cleric. Blunt weapons, decent armor, access to some mystic arts. I'm a cleric. Honjo was right, and I didn't plan to complain about teaming up at this point. I'd be damned to have any meaningless casualties, so I had to disclose the information I knew. Jesus Christ. I put a hand on my chest, took a deep breath, then spoke.
奴らの一人から直に聞いた。そいつはもう倒したから、そこに上がってる6人中、個人は2人ってことになる。
Yeah, clerics can be quite powerful with their divine magic.
だけど、もっと上がいるんだよ。連中はトップが2人で、その下に幹部が3人。この5人は正直なところ。
That's not even counting Babylon.
どうやっても勝てそうにない。
I silently nodded.
そう。でもレン君が実際に見たのはそのうちの一人だけでしょ。
わからない。けど、そんな気がするんだ。
I knew those bastards. I didn't know why, but I felt deja vu at their names. Reinhard and Mercurius, Machina, Samuel, and Schreiber. I was no match for them now. Honjo tilted her head like she was thinking about something, then checked the information on screen again. Deja vu! I have been in this place before. Whoa! Sorry for sudden Eurobeat.
バレリアトリファ。私が怖いっていうか気持ち悪いと思うのはこいつだけど、レン君的には別に問題じゃないって感じ？
まさかそんなことあるわけないだろう。
It was just, how to put it? I couldn't describe it well, but his disposition seemed different from the rest. In that sense, Honjo was right to feel weirded out by him.
その神父は現状の司令官だ。狩猟代行って言ったか、例の5人が戻ってくるまで連中を仕切る役目。
つまり頭脳労働専門ってわけ。まあ確かにそんな感じのやつだったけど、だからってそれは別に私らにとっちゃ大差ないっていうか。
Yeah, it wasn't like he was weak. He blew me away with a single strike. None of those freaks in the Obsidian Round Table were foes we could just beat down. It didn't change that Wilhelm, Rusalka, and Sakurai couldn't be beaten by conventional means.
とりあえずいろいろ突っ込みどころはあるけど、それは後に回すとして、今は私が思ってることを言っておくわ。
I mean, hackers and stories can hack pretty much anything. It's a computer, like that kind of stuff is a blank checkbook.
まずベアトリス・キルヒアイゼンと桜井圭は代替わりしてるから、実質私が見れた情報は5人分。それにレン君が言う5人も足して合計10人。足りないんだよ、あと3人。正直ね、幹部とかその連中のことはなんとなくだけど分かってた。 プロテクトの規模とか難易度とか、そういうことからこの下に何人いるかはだいたい見当つくんだよ。でもね、残りの3人、これについては痕跡すらない。データが存在してないのか、私でも読めないくらい深い。
If I recall, we were only introduced to those 5 in the
ま
prologue.
るでわからないから怖くなる。
The curious Reinhard and the 3 battalion commanders.
情報の傾聴で脅威度を測るなら、レン君が言ってる5人よりこの3人の方がはるかにヤバいよ。楽天的に考えれば大したことないから登録されてなかったとか。
Oh wait, no, we're talking about the ones who aren't either of
そのうちもあり
those.
じゃありなんだけど。
Babylon and Cain are 2 of the 3.
もしかしたらこの3人はナチの切り札なのかもしれない。そして私たちはそのうち2人に。
Honjo blew out cigarette smoke as she kept staring at her monitor. I knew what she was implying, and we were thinking the exact same thing. Hence my dumbfoundedness.
教会にいる神父。あそこは他にもシスターが1人と月額の。
いい、言うな、分かってる。
本当に？
ああ、さすがにそこまでおめでたくない。
Thinking back on it now, the hints had been laid out before me clear as day. In my stupidity, though, I merely chose not to notice them. It wasn't like it had been with Kasumi. I distorted the truth through the filter that was my friend's.
だけど、それでもあの人は俺の先輩だ。シスターにしても何度か世話になっている。だから。
Even if my suspicions about those 2 were correct, I couldn't hesitate any longer. It wasn't a matter of fighting or saving someone, I just...
あの人たちに誰も殺させない。後のことはその時になってから考えるさ。
Korosasanai. Honjo threw a somewhat curious gaze at me when I said that.
なんだよ。
いや、なんかこう意外にレン君って熱いよね。割に恥ずかしいこととか平気で言っちゃうタイプでしょ。
Mind your own business.
ほらダメだってば、そんな顔しちゃ。私今の結構グーッとくるもんがあったんだから。ほらシロンはマリーちゃんと遊んでるし、レン君は私と2人で盛り上がる。実はこの客船に密かな自信を持ってたり。
Hmm? How do your legs play into it, though? I mean, if you want to play Cat's Cradle, that's fine. If you want to play a card game or what have you, that's very fine, Ellie. But where do your legs play into it?
ミニスカ履いて足上げるなよ。
And while I'm at it, don't take off your boots either.
ふざけてるなら俺は行くぞ。お嬢のくせにバカなことやってんな。
She pouted and sighed conspicuously. Ah, Twister, that makes sense. I didn't know you could play... Well, I guess you can play that with 2 people. I've never played Twister. She was basically a female version of Shiro. I was better off not taking her seriously.
分かったよ。このことについてはまた後で。
Oh,
今度2人っきりになっても続けよう。
bear, 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 bear.
で、さっきも言ったけど、私レン君の話に突っ込みたいところがあるわけでさ。
ああ、言ってたな。で、
Cat's Cradle with toes would take a heck of a lot of dexterity. Promising myself not to get stuck all alone with her again, I urged her onwards. Just then,
ナチの頭が町に来たのに、なんで神父が未だに代行なんかやってるわけ？
Honcho accurately pointed out the one thing I was deliberately avoiding because it was too much of a pain. Her enrollment at Kotoku Girls Academy may have been a total joke, but that also meant she wasn't an idiot.
おかしいよね。なんで？
それはそのなんていうかな。
Talking about it would lead to a rather absurd explanation, so I honestly wanted to keep quiet about it. But this really was a serious issue, so I probably couldn't go hiding it.
ラインハルトはまだ完全じゃない。
Spine said those bastards would return if 8 magic circles were opened in the city. To look at it from another perspective, that meant they couldn't return as long as those 8 remained shut. So in concept, the whole thing was more like a summoning rather than an arrival. I didn't know where they were returning from, but in any case it meant Reinhard was still not inside this city. To summarize it in direct terms.
そうか。なるほどね。
Honjo accepted that extraordinary story surprisingly quickly.
8箇所。要はそういうことか。とすれば白のやつ全部分かっててここにいたな。通りで妙だと思ったよ。あいつが丸1日以上花にこもってるなんて。
Letting out a few quick grumbles, Honjo returned to swiftly tapping away at her keyboard. She then stared intently at the surveillance camera footage on the monitor. As a result,
やっぱり。
Honjo said that in a low, trembling voice, her tone and expression carrying a complete mix of anger and joy.
シロ、このバカ。あんた責任取んなさいよ。
Kono baka! Kono baka! What's going on here? She took the mic and patched through to the room Shiro and Marie were playing in. It was then that I saw it too.
お客さんが来てる。もう手遅れだね。
A mixture of chills and shivers rushed up my spine. It seemed like the opportunity to test out what I just talked about came quicker than I expected.
3つ目のスワスチカはここってわけか。うちのやつら多分皆殺しにされちゃうよ。
Are you kidding me? We don't even get a break? What? Oh, yes. 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 She's wearing a skirt. She's wearing a skirt. She's wearing a skirt where the slit goes all the way up, Meiji. She's wearing a skirt. Yes! Everyone, appreciate this. Appreciate it. This is the upside of her being evil. This is the upside of her being evil. This is the upside of the nun being evil. This is the upside of Lisa being evil. That outfit, I didn't think she was going to keep the thigh showing, but she upgraded it for the uniform. And she's taken off her glasses and like, oh, she's unleashed herself. Oh my. Oh my, that does things. That does things. My heart is all aflutter. Staring at us through the surveillance cameras was a woman with a strikingly familiar mole under one eye, her face contorted in an almost palpable sorrow as she stood upon the club stage. Lisa Brenner, no mistaking it. She traded in her nun's habit for a vastly different-looking black SS Army uniform. Oh, no. No, thank you. I won't say that phrase again. She gracefully walked through the dazzling lights and flood of violent sound, paying no heed to the crowd of 100 plus there. She was neither avoiding contact with the people around her, nor was she being avoided by them. Yet no one in that jam-packed hall touched even her shoulder. The girl, Kei Sakurai, narrowed her eyes. She thought about the tragedy that was about to unfold here, but perhaps realizing it was pointless, concentrated on the stage with a cold glint in her eyes. On the other intruder, who had invaded the premises without a sound or trace... On the other intruder, who'd invaded the premises without a sound or trace, much like herself. On the dark, holy woman who languidly pulled her long hair up under the lights. Lisa Brenner, tonight's lead actress.
さあ、あなたはどうするの、藤井君。
The bottomless pit's hall was already filled with a great variety of spectators, from somewhat elderly men to girls who still had traces of innocence left in them. They all looked up at the stage in a bit of a daze. Standing there was a lone woman I knew. She wasn't wearing her trademark glasses, but I had no doubt in my mind that it was her. Sister Lisa, Lisa Brenner.
面白いな。まるでお通夜じゃねえかよ。
美人の凄みってやつかね。
None of the 100 plus spectators dared say a word. An abnormal silence reigned in league with the loud club music. Shiro, Honjo, and I stared blankly as the other guys got in our way, preventing us from reaching the stage. Marie had returned to my body in preparation for battle, but I hadn't seen this coming. Since I couldn't predict what was to come next, I didn't know what to do. Perhaps she had been waiting for us. If so, did that mean a fight would break out as soon as we arrived? I hadn't gone off the deep end enough to suddenly start a battle to the death with someone I knew, but in that case, how was I to put an end to this situation?
こんばんは、藤井君。
But in that moment of anguish, she looked right at me with piercing eyes and we locked gazes. She spoke in the exact same mild tone she did the last time we met. Nausea came over me as the realization that this was not a dream finally began to sink in. She was the same Lisa Brenner I knew before all this madness began. We were separated by a roughly 20-meter long distance, yet she spoke calmly across the sea of petrified spectators. For a second I thought you were gonna say that you were separated by a 20-year age gap. Ren. Alas.
悪いことは言わないから、すぐにこの場を離れなさいね。正直私は、あなたと争いたくないの。
だったら。
Indeed, it does. I instinctively started shouting.
あんたがここから去ってくれ。俺だってあんたと戦いたくなんかない。きっと氷室先輩だって。
ええ、あの子はそうでしょうね。
Her words carried a hint of self-deprecation. Though her eyes were filled with sorrow, she followed up with some rather callous words.
でも私がここから引いてしまえば、代わりにベイかマレウスがやってくるだけ。事態は何も変わらない。
Alright, Babylon, let's tango!
シスター、俺は。
I didn't want to hear those bastards' names from her mouth.
どうして。俺にはあんたや先輩があの気が狂った連中と同じようには思えない。
Oh boy.
どうしてあいつらと行動を共にする。
あなたと知り合うずっと前から、私は彼らの仲間だからよ。私とあなたが出会っていても出会わなくても、今日という日は起きていた。何かが変わったわけじゃない。だからね、これが最後の忠告。
Sister Lisa's eyes narrowed. She stared at me with arrogance and haughtiness, her gaze replete with the pressure of an empress.
去りなさい、藤井君。あなたが死んだら、レアが悲しむ。
Flashes of that day flew by for a moment, memories of that irreparably shattered day-to-day life. She understood nothing. Couldn't she tell that the mere act of hearing something like that from her lips would make Himuro sadder than even the issue of my life or death? We could argue over stupid shit like dying, killing, fighting, or whatnot, but it wouldn't get us anywhere. I decided to stop thinking.
シスター、ここから消えるのはあんただよ。口で言っても通じないなら力ずくで叩き出してやる。
そう。じゃあ私もその考えにならんわね。
Sister Lisa nodded to me, conspicuously avoiding my
聞けないの
gaze.
はこちらも同じ。私にも理由があるし、叶えなければならない願いがある。 その邪魔をするなら排除するわ。清掃13騎士団黒煙卓第11位バビロン・マグダレナ・リザ・ブレンナ。今の私たちが有する最高戦力と戦って勝てると思わない方がいい。
Oh, she's cool. She's so cool, but also, yeah, by... At that exact moment, a hole opened diagonally above Sister Lisa. No, that wasn't quite right. It was a mask, or something like that. A jet-black object that didn't give off even the smallest ember of light was floating in the air. Well, that's strange. It sent shivers down my spine.
Oi,
Lisa Brenner is not a teenager, not even close. But it's pretty Fate Stay Nighty, honestly. It's an urban an urban fantasy VN that was originally an irae like Fate Stay Night. Yeah, and apparently translating it was even more difficult than translating FSN. I mean, I don't know. I can't remember Lisa's age off the top of my head. I don't think they're 20 years apart.
こりゃちょっと。
Alright, mortals. Shiro and Honjo, who had been quietly watching my conversation with Sister Lisa up to that point, broke out into uncharacteristically stiff smiles. They'd probably felt it too. The aberrant, wicked intentions oozing out from deep within that hellish black mask. Yetzira. That was her Arnab. Yetzira. The Mask of Pale Death. A second later, the darkness exploded. A human figure grew out of the mask. Admittedly an odd expression, but that was the only way I could describe the phenomenon unfolding before my eyes. Arms, legs, a waist, and a torso materialized in but a few seconds, like they protruded out of the mask. Sister Lisa was no longer alone. Oh, Babylon is a tag team act. The Loving Insane? Interesting. Oh boy. Oh boy. Oh boy, look at that. It's got a big stick. Oh no. Standing next to her was a peculiar giant, easily over 2 meters tall, its body covered in bundles of thick muscles like the statue of a fierce god. A tattoo with a complex design was carved into the left side of its body, serving only to accentuate its bizarre appearance even further. Niwatori? Vel, I'm not sure that's the reaction you should be having to this thing. I think you should be a little more concerned. Oh boy. Oh boy. This guy's trouble. What the hell? Was that thing human? It didn't look that way at all. Oh, hello. Hello, Niwatori. Basically, I don't even. You know what? I've got nothing this time. I've got nothing. If you can't legally marry another person's stand, then what about all my fanfiction, Moid? What will become of it? I kid. I've never written fanfiction in my life. Despite its huge frame, the giant didn't feel real in the slightest. It stood right before me, but its whole appearance seemed so unrealistic it rather felt like a bad joke. Nonetheless, the bloodlust that emanated was so fierce it hit me like a ton of bricks, sending me an ominously negative wave across the hall. Ugh, I would never write self-insert if I was to ever write that. Like, come on. Obviously, alright. Obviously, I would be doing something like, shipping Spice Girls with Golden Experience. If you would date a stand, which one would it be? Stone Free. Or, wait, no. Paisley Park. I would date Paisley Park. The spectators, whose time had stopped by the appearance of Sister Lisa, woke up all at once. They all looked at the monster with eyes of dread. That fear amplified, spread, saturated, and started welling up within them. Those driven with the fear tried to get out right away, clogging up the narrow exit. Some of them violently pushed others out of the way, desperate to save themselves first. Just then... sorry. We go hard here. Shiro fired a gun at the ceiling and let out an angry roar exceeding all other sounds. That was enough to quell the 100 or so panicking spectators into silence. That wasn't all. They stopped running, parted to the side, and opened a path to the stage. Yeah, Shiro has a gun! That's all he has! Everyone else here has magic. All Shiro has is a gun. I love him. He's not supernatural at all. He's just 100% regular human. Paying no heed to my dumbfoundment at his Moses-esque feats, Shiro calmly walked down the hallway. Honjo trailed behind him, wearing the casual expression of someone taking an everyday stroll down the street. Sister Lisa's voice carried a hint of admiration. Honjo listlessly snickered while gesturing to the mysterious giant, who had yet to budge even an inch. It's a zombie! It's a zombie! He's dead! He's dead! That's a corpse.
なんつうか墓場くせえ。
そうだね。刺繍プンプンだよ。そのでかいの。ビクター・フランケンシュタイン博士。あれって英国文学のはずだけど、いいわけ？ドイツ人がパクっちゃってさ。
Well, honestly, that's a good point. They just had them part and then referred to the feat as being Moses-esque. Very neat. Sister Lisa laughed at Honjo's comment. She wasn't denying it. She didn't say anything. Almost like she was admitting that her comment was the truth. This huge-ass guy is a corpse? Is that why it didn't feel real despite being so huge? True, the force that bastard was giving off felt rather twisted. Not that the force of something living. Not the force of something living, but rather that of a large machine, like the oppression of an approaching tank. A heartless, lifeless machine of slaughter.
清掃13騎士団黒煙卓第2位トバルカインおっしゃる通りよお嬢さん彼は死体生きていないこうなったものを私が使う最初から
She's a necromancer. I'd like to necromance her. Oh, that's actually a really good rhyme. I want to use that. I want to use that sometime in something. I don't know, if, like in a poem or like a verse or a lyric or what. But I like that rhyme.
まずはお見事その統率力と洞察力彼を前にして正気でいられる度胸も含めて非凡だと言っていいだけど
Sister Lisa's eyes narrowed again. She wasn't looking at me nor at Shiro Honjo. No, not a necromancer. Necromancer. She's a necromancer, and I'd like to necromance her. I know, it's so necromantic. I am quite the necromantic. I'm just a romantic generally, of course. My heart leapt as I felt a certain kind of unease and fretfulness explode within me. This is bad, very bad. Perhaps she's...
指揮官としては最悪よ 今夜の私の目的はここのスワスチカを開くこと。あなたたちと遊んでいる暇はないの。判断ミスね、二人とも。それだけ統制が取れるならあの時逃がすべきだったねえ、カイン。
The twinkle of a flash, the brusque lump of iron wielded by the giant she referred to as Cain rumbled with a sinister echo. It was probably his honor. It let out an electrifying roar. Sister Lisa was up on the stage, waving her hands and giving orders like a conductor. A musical suite of agonizing screams began with her command. The giant was the musician, and the people were his instruments. It was an orchestra of carnage. A flash of purple lightning surged in the hall with a thunderous roar. My eyes were blinded by the splitting lightning, and my eardrums burst by the roars in the airtight space. I tried to dash forward in the whited-out silence, but I was blown away by a shockwave. Blood and chunks of meat splattered me a second after I crashed into the wall. The bodies of the hapless club's attendees were torn apart and split into pieces by the lightning. The stench of literally boiling blood and burnt dry flesh filled my nostrils. I could tell even without my sight and hearing that the hall had just turned into a mountain of corpses in the instant it took the monster to unleash that single attack. Shiro! Say something if you're alive, you dumbass. You couldn't die that easily, right? I gritted my teeth and slapped my knees. My legs were completely numb. I must have been hit by the lightning as well. I had to stand and fight, damn it. I was the only one here able to take on that monster. I could tell blood was pouring out of all the cavities on my face as a result of the shock I had received, but I put that out of mind. I knew this disaster was undoubtedly brought about by my own naivete. Sister Lisa, so you really are the same as those bastards who kill without fear or hesitation. Then... You know what? Let's go. Bip. Yeah, it's time. I didn't want to fight her, nor did I want her to die, and I didn't want her to kill anyone either. The least I could do for having failed to accomplish any of that was get rid of that undead freak as soon as possible. I remembered what Spine had said. Those bastards' goal was to cause massacres at 8 points around the city, to create 8 battlefields, then fighting here would be playing into their plans. However, as long as these guys were sticking to those places, I couldn't lure them anywhere else. So what I had to do now was take out Cain right away. Nothing else. We're gonna fight her. My hearing returned right around the time when I stood up. I could hear gunfire. He's gonna fight her. It's fine. They're NPCs, they don't count. Their deaths mean nothing, less than nothing. It's meaningless. Shiro and Honjo were shrewder and more sensible than me, so they must have gotten to a safe zone quickly enough. Just as that thought filled me with relief, my vision returned. Tubal Cain turned back to me. Either he noticed my stare or Sister Lisa sicked him on me. His turn was more like that of a power shovel than a human's. Seriously, was I the only sane person left in here? The corpse was rotting, as corpses normally did. His existence was a horrible perversion of nature. I could barely even look straight at him. I took a step forward, which Cain saw as his cue to leap off the stage. His body was so massive each step was accompanied by a tremor in the earth. His power was undoubtedly extraordinary, yet the place itself didn't allow for any strategies involving quick movement and surprise attacks. Though that last attack wiped out about half of them, there were still people clamoring in the hall. I would have to take that thing head on if I were to ensure their safe escape. So come on, Marie. Let's do it together. Let's beat that monster back into the grave it crawled out of! And now, for a change of scenery. Blood and pieces of flesh shot off with the roar of the first attack. Lisa Brenner closed her eyes and perceived just how many lives had been lost. 78 died instantly. 51 were fatally wounded. In other words, 129 souls were reaped by that prior attack. Was it there? No. That still wasn't enough. The souls gathered at the bottomless pit were of surprisingly fine quality. They weren't spiritually tempered. They had merely lived dirty lives. They were outlaws who took refuge here from the police, their parents, teachers, or the mafia in order to live. Realizing they couldn't live on the surface, those brave fugitives had declined to discard their true selves like so many others had done, and instead sought a place where they belonged, a place where they could find kindred spirits. In a way, the difference between them and cowards was paper thin, but very few were capable of even that nowadays. When you considered them as Shiro Yusa and Eri Honjo's lapdogs, perhaps they had little self-will, but even then, they still had value when seen as parts of a whole. At the very least, they undoubtedly had a better understanding of life and death than those who lazily shuffled through their everyday lives. So while it normally took about 500 lives to open a swastika, it would only take 200, 300 of the lives here to open this one. Indeed, another swing or two from Cain, and the woman's job would be done for the time being.
すごいものですね。大した威力だ。
Oh, Kay is tagging along in civilian garb. Lisa's thoughts were interrupted by the sound of her comrade, who had walked up next to her at some point during all this.
まるで爆撃。私が知る限り、一撃でここまでできるものは他にいない。黒煙卓の現有戦力中、最強は。
Also, look at that sprite. Ooh boy. Yeah. It's a civilian clothes. The alternative is an SS uniform. Or a school uniform. Some sort of uniform. So she's out of uniform at the moment. Anyway. Admire the thigh. And we'll move on. Remember, mortals, thighs are the best part. Kay looked unimpressively at the giant next to her. She spoke softly with a somewhat too imperfect impudence.
しかし、随分と変わってしまった。バビロン、これは本当に。
ええ、彼よ。
Lisa answered curtly, her forehead moist from intense concentration.
あなたも知っているように、トバルカインは代替わりする。彼は3代目だから、こうなった時、初代と2代目の肉体と融合したのよ。
フランケンシュタインの怪物か。死体をつなぎ合わせた体。道理で代を重ねるごとに巨大になる。そしてその分強くなる。しかしそれだけに少々下せない。あなたが先ほどクレッシェンドと命令したが、私なら初撃でフォルテッシモというところだ。最大効率で戦果を上げると。
I love that they're actually
すな
using
わちそうい
musical
うことだ
terms.
と思うのです。
I love that they're using actual musical terms. Crescendo and fortissimo. Fortissimo is, you know, play it hard, I think. And crescendo is like slowly raised, you know, you slowly rise to a crescendo. What was soft again? What was pianissimo? I think it was pianissimo. I think it was pianissimo. It's been a hot minute since I've played piano. Lisa replied with a tired, wry smile at the implied question of why she held back.
言ったでしょ。私は11年カインを使っていない。つまりこの彼を操るのは初めてなのよ。まだ手探りの状態なのに初撃で全力なんて下手をしたらこちらが焼き切れてしまいかねない。
She knows her limits.
だからいわば短期運転ね。正直それでもかなりきついの。実のところあなたとこうして話しているのも苦になるくらい。
Ah, yes, I knew it. I knew I remembered my sheet music at least a little bit.
日頃鍛えていないからそうなるのです。
Kay shook her head at the absurdity of it all, but continued in a serious
どう
tone.
やら付き合って正解だったようですね。以前藤井君にした例え話。あなたは武器が強力でも使い手が脆弱だという典型だ。 護衛がいなければ戦えない。
そう。じゃあしっかり守って。それから彼は
生きていますよ。そしておそらく戦う気かと。
Kay was staring at Ren Fuji, who had since gotten to his feet and was glaring right at them.
今のうちに逃げればいいのに。
Oh, you think we just give in? Nah.
彼がそういう男じゃないことは私よりあなたの方がよく知っていることでしょう。
ええ、そうね。
Too while Cain turned to Ren in sync with Lisa. No expression could be read off the death mask adorning him. It spoke everything as his function. It spoke everything as his function as a soulless machine.
まだスワス地下は開いていない。あなたが仕事をこなそうとするのなら、彼は全力で止めようとするでしょう。もはやどうあがいても戦うしかないですね。心が痛みますか、シスター。
まったく。
Oh, come on, you can't make that face. That face is cheating. That face is cheating. Mataku. Lisa produced a bitter smile.
私が嫌いなのはわかるけど、意地悪なのもほどほどにね。でないとあなた。
別に問題ないでしょう。
Kay replied to that candid advice with a steely voice.
私をこんな女にしたのはあなたたちなんだから。
And then there were two who were watching the pair's conversation with disinterested foolhardiness.
ダメだ。耳がバカになってる。これしばらく使えそうにねえけど、お前は？
私も正直だいぶダメ。あんたの声があさっての方から聞こえてくるよ。
It was sheer luck that spared them from that previous attack. Though they'd promptly taken evasive actions, humans didn't possess the reaction speed to avoid getting struck by lightning to begin with. Unlike Ren, it wouldn't have been odd if they had died then and there.
命中率が悪いのか、それともおめこぼししてもらったのか。何にせよ全力で舐めら
I
れて
think
る
my
な。
current theory is that Shiro is literally protected by fate, so he can't die yet.
指揮官としては最悪とかね。まあ否定はしないけど、あんた最初からそんな柄じゃないのにね。
What did it mean to open a swastika? What had to be done? What happened? And what was the result? Shiro probably stopped his comrades from running away in order to figure that out. At least that was what Ellie believed.
あんたのその全開で人出なしなとこ。
Oh, he just let everyone
ぶっちゃ
die.
けナ
Cool.
チといい勝負。
Oh snap! Meiji, I didn't notice that. You're right. That her moon. I actually noticed them individually. I knew he had a sun pendant, and I saw her moon pendant in the CG, but I didn't realize that they matched. That's adorable. Oh, that's so adorable. Oh, that's so adorable. That's so sweet. Oh my god. Oh, that's so romantic. Oh, you two. You lovebirds, you. Oh, you're so cute. Please survive, you beautiful little mortals you.
褒めんなよ。照れるだろ。
まあそれはいいけど、耳がバカになってもやれることはあるわけでね。
From this distance, they wouldn't have been able to hear what their opponents were talking about even with proper hearing. As such, their temporary deafness didn't mean all that much. Ellie ignored Shiro at that point, instead intently at the two on stage. Never. We're never going to tear them apart. Why would we do that?
おい。
少し黙ってな。
Cute! Oh, they're a cute couple. I love this duo. Ellie admonished her companion and started moving her lips. After a while, she looked at
あい
Shiro.
つらが何喋ってるのか。
She can read lips! Ellie could read lips. She had received no training in it. It was mostly a self-taught skill she had. As for the parts she couldn't pick up, she filled in the blanks through observation, concentration, and thought. She told Shiro what the enemies had been talking about.
だと思う。
頼りね
信じないならご勝手に。
えな。シスターを倒せば、あのカインとかいう化け物も倒せるってことか。
Yup, this is one of the cases where you want to go for the nun,
そういうことだ
the
ね。
handler.
まあそのためにはまずシスターを守ってるあのお嬢ちゃんが邪魔なんだけど。
そうだな。こんなのはどうだ。
Shiro explained the plan he had concocted. Ellie nodded, ducked, and moved away from Shiro as quietly as possible. The rabble trying to escape the crowd proved to be a good smokescreen. The pair had known them for about 2 months, but they had never accounted for much to Shiro on a personal level.
もうちょっと使える奴らだと思ったんだが、ま、普通ってのはこんなもんか。
Shiro shook his head with a laugh and then proceeded to forget about them altogether. It was his creed to actively participate in battles and get as much fun out of them as possible. He had no interest in those who couldn't keep up. Gun time! Once he predicted Eri was out of sight, Shiro fired the deagle in his hand. The Desert Eagle in his hand. It should have been a surprise attack, however.
早速ありがと
Yep, he's got a Desert Eagle. The bullets were deflected by the red sword that had suddenly appeared at Kay's side out of thin air, much like the grotesque giant had.
あの姉ちゃんも化け物かよ。
Shiro clicked his tongue and fired 2 more shots without missing a beat.
う。小うるさいスズメね。
A fussy little sparrow. Is it a trash meme gun? I wouldn't know. Kay swiftly grabbed the sword and swung it with the ease of lifting a twig. With a mere flip of the wrist, she had repelled all the bullets with the blade of her sword.
おいおい、50口径だぜ。
50口径125ミリ滑空砲を持ってきたのだ。両手を使ってあげるわ。
戦車持ってこいってか。
Shiro didn't take Kay's words as a joke. She repelled the bullets. To do that, she would need extraordinary dynamic vision as well as physical strength and the grip to handle the impact of 50 caliber magnum bullets with one hand. Naturally, the strength of her unyielding wrist was far beyond the limits of human training. Kay stared right at him as she lifted her flame-wreathed sword. It wouldn't have been unusual to despair at the glimpse of strength she displayed in that one moment alone. However,
なるほどね。
Shiro sounded a laugh, not out of despair nor as a bluff.
茶化程度食らっても平気な奴らがわざわざ弾くか。どうやらドンピシャみたいだぜ。エリー。
Lisa was controlling Cain. That required ungodly amounts of concentration. In which case, something as light as getting hit by a pebble, that is, bullets had amounted to as far as the bastards were concerned, might have been enough to make her drop the reins. Resigning himself to a support role wasn't exactly up Shiro's alley, but
そういうことだ。ほら大将、さっさと行ってあの化け物ぶちのめせよ。
oh, we get to fight Cain. Though it was vague, the sound of Shiro's constant gunfire was enough to make me understand what he was trying to do. He had no way of beating Cain, but he planned to hinder his movement to make up for it. It was the opposite idea of shooting the enemy commander. The horse was the real threat here, so the commander was using all her might to hold on to the reins. If she let go, the thing would turn into nothing more than a corpse, a puppet.
それまで持たせないとな。
I'd wait for an opening and attack with all I had. Sister Lisa had to focus on my actions just as much as she had to focus on controlling that monster. And the more she did, the more the fruits of Shiro's plan would start to show. Two-Ball Cain looked at me from behind that soulless mask. I stared back at the giant. Ah! I sprinted with enough force to kick off the floor and shot forward like a cannonball. I could do this. I doubted I'd lose to this giant in terms of speed. If I could close the distance between us all at once, I might get lucky and decapitate him in one slash. I finished forming my weapon in a second and swung my guillotine out of a right arm down on the giant. A moment later, I felt the sensation of decapitation passing through my arm. I was partly sure I'd won, but I was once again blown away by the lightning generated around Cain, and that was not all. Cain dashed after me, practically at the speed of lightning. To think he was faster than me with that huge hulking body and long weapon. I was shocked, but it only lasted a moment. I resolved myself that I wouldn't retreat. If I took a step back, I'd just be cut down. And if I dodged, Cain would blow away all those people standing behind me. My only choice was to meet him head on. Cool boy. Cain swung his giant lump of iron down, which I blocked with the guillotine on my right arm. I felt like I heard Marie scream at the same time. It was already a miracle that my weapon didn't crack against such mass, speed, and power. Though I avoided getting chopped in half, I felt the whole impact of that attack. The floor cracked around me, boring a crater into the ground. It felt intense enough to make me think that my spine had snapped and shot right out of my body. And the lightning the bastard's weapon gave off with each slash, that was powerful beyond belief. It was a lot like that sword of fire Sakurai wielded. My opponent's range of attack was not limited to the length of his greatsword. It was too dangerous to lock blades with this dead freak. At the very least, I didn't feel confident I could last on the defensive. So, I had to take the offensive. I'd just keep hacking away at him, not giving the freak a chance to swing his sword. I avoided the monstrous strength pushing against my blade and twisted myself to dodge. A roar loud enough to crack the very floor opened. A little roar loud enough to crack the very floor open echoed across the hall as I used the lingering shockwaves to jump over Cain. I could do it. This time I would take this monster's head. He couldn't see me. I was confident I could win. However, the next lightning strike managed to hit me in midair. The high voltage caused my limbs to twitch, boiled my blood, and made me feel like my insides were being torn apart. I flew head over heels and crashed to the floor as blood literally gushed out of me. I couldn't breathe. Blood was pouring out of my eyes, and my clothes were torn off and charred. Had I been a normal human, I would have been cut to pieces without even a single bone left of me. But rather than those wounds, I was more pissed off by my own stupidity. Though I'd known that freak's traits, I'd stupidly forgotten all about them in the presence of his overwhelming pressure. Cain was a corpse. A feint meant nothing to a machine like him. Trying to get into his blind spots was pointless when his controller could see me. That's right. Cain had 360-degree vision as long as she could see me, and since the thing was a corpse, he could possibly perform feats impossible for the human body, superpowered or not. Cain then swung his weapon, and that alone, a full 180 degrees without turning around, as if to endorse that theory. I dodged on instinct, but it mowed down the area above my head, shattering the seats and the people behind me into smithereens, blowing them away, blood and chunks of meat scattered behind me. My vision was blurred not by the intense pain racking my whole body, but by fury. That thing had probably killed another 100 or so people with that attack. Just how many would he kill before he was satisfied? I didn't care if this was a den of criminals. They most certainly didn't deserve to be massacred by a monster like Cain. Two-ball Cain turned to face me right as I gritted my teeth and stood up. This dead freak didn't even need a fraction of his power to pull off something like turning his joints around to slash right behind himself. But even so, I'd be damned if I lost. At the very least, the freak had yet to land a single blow on me. I wouldn't be satisfied until I made sure this masked dead freak stayed dead for good. He was fast and powerful enough that not even Sister Lisa, the one controlling him, could predict his movements. The most efficient attack for me at the moment was... I took a deep breath and fell into a crouch. Pulling back my right hand, I assumed a fighting stance. That idea came easily to me, no doubt thanks to having a kendo maniac for a childhood friend. If I was going for the fastest slash possible, I had but one choice. An EI slash! That was the only way! Hell yeah! I'd be trying to imitate something I'd merely seen on the spot, not to mention the shape of my weapon was irregular. Still, the basic principle must have remained the same. There was little variety in stances when the idea was to turn your whole body into something akin to a cannon and launch your blade like a cannonball. A turnabout death blow, a double-edged sword that would end fatally for me if I missed. But it was the only way. Cain silently raised his lump of iron. Perhaps Sister Lisa had caught on to my plan. It wouldn't be slash versus slash. No, he would probably try to zap me again. His lightning blade, far faster than a speeding bullet, was about to fall upon me. So I focused my mind, steeled my heart, and slowed down the seconds. A moment became a second became a minute. I should have been used to that idea. Having been thoroughly forced into a corner, I would surpass the speed of lightning itself! A ridiculous feat when one thought about it, but unless I accomplished just that, I would be getting nowhere. The screams and gunfire around me completely vanished. Within that silence, Cain and I faced off against each other. As I held on to my desperate concentration, I awaited for the next moment in that divided light and darkness. Faster, 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 faster! I had to soar faster than anyone in order to claim that freak's head. Cain's tremendous body tilted forward slightly. I drew my guillotine of a right arm at the same time. At that moment, a similarly unusual and unpredictable phenomenon occurred. A dark veil suddenly struck the floor. The lights went out all at once, shrouding the room in darkness. That was definitely no accident. The enemy had a brain on them too. It was a two-stage tactic. They would use the resulting darkness not only to blind Lisa, Kain's controller, but to launch their attack as well. Having figured that out, Kay swung her sword in an arc right after the lights went out. The air she cut through was dyed a reddish gold, making the center of the floor erupt into scarlet flames. With light having been returned, Kay scanned the floor and made sure to confirm how the battle had progressed. Perfect. Barely any time had passed. In fact, it was Ren, not Cain, whose movements had been thrown off most by the sudden loss of light. He would soon perish. Though they hadn't gotten along, Kay still felt a slight twinge of pity for the end of a boy she'd gotten to know a little, but her thoughts turned to what would come after his death. She would witness the opening of a swastika for a third time and see the end of her rival. As such, they would have no choice but to enact large-scale massacre in order to open the remaining 5. She felt annoyed by the unpleasant work that would mean for her in the future, but it was only logical to kill your enemies when you had the chance. Kay and Lisa were much more realists and rationalists compared to the fun-loving Wilhelm and Rusalka. And so...
Sayonara, Fuji-kun.
Sayonara, Fuji-kun. Right as the two of them coincidentally uttered those parting words at the same time. Oh, they both said it, how cute.
だからなめるなっつってんだろ
It's Shiro, my hero. I need a hero. I'm holding out for a hero till the end of the night. And he's gotta be strong, and he's gotta be fast, and he's gotta be fresh from the fight. I need a hero. Yes. That sneer and voice brought Kay back to reality. She quickly looked back to where Shiro had been just a short while ago, but...
いない
She'd lost sight of Shiro Yusa. Did he flee? No, that wasn't it. Perhaps she'd been wrong to dismiss it as worthless, but the dropping of the light had just been a decoy, and their true goal was what came after.
ためのやつに言いたかねえけど若いなお前
They're so cool! Look at that! They're so cool! Look at this! They're so cool! They're so cool! Oh my god! Oh, Gababa! Mortals, look! Look! They're back to back with their guns like that. Oh, and he's got a pistol, and she's got a revolver. Oh my god, that's so cute! Yeah! Oh boy. That's gotten me all... Ooh. I'm getting a case of the vapors over here.
優等生は意外に超突猛進型なのよ
She caught sight of the two of them mocking her as they pressed their muzzles side by side in her direction. Kay couldn't understand what they were thinking. What good was shooting do? 2 bullets were no more effective against them than 1, and she could easily deflect them at this distance. Even if they did happen to hit her, it wouldn't cause significant damage. It was completely pointless. But then how would one explain those confident smirks?
ヴィルヘルムのコスプレでもしろ
Go cosplay as Wilhelm! 2 bullets shot forward with the overlapping gunfire. Kay could see their trajectories perfectly, but they weren't aimed at either her or Lisa. In that case, could they have been... By the time realization dawned on Kay, it was already too late. The sound of an explosion far more meager compared to Kain's attack echoed across the hall. The bullets passed right by Kay, destroying a fire extinguisher on the stage. She used the blade of her sword to deflect the fire extinguisher, jumping about with the force of a barrel roll. However, her enemies were not after that, but rather the dispersal of the foam inside. In other words... Her line of sight became a milky white haze. She couldn't see at all. Though it wasn't impossible for her to wipe out the smoke screen with explosive fire and a swing of her sword, it would have required concentration and time. Kay could tell Lisa was growing impatient behind her. That was more than enough to tell Kay that Cain was now nothing more than a puppet the older woman had lost control of. Kay's whole body was then stampeded with chills and shivers. He would die. He was going to die again. No. She couldn't bear losing him again. Her fear and impatience shot past their limits, making Kay lunge forward instantly.
くそ
I didn't know that Kay was so attached to Cain. Kay turned into a raging hurricane as she made off towards the two, breaking through the smokescreen. She wouldn't let him die. She'd be damned if she did. She would never, ever allow him to be broken even further. Murderous intent in front of Lisa, as well as the obstruction of a comrade's hunt through distraction. Kay didn't hesitate at all to take those actions that would break her oath. To be accurate, she'd completely forgotten about it. Oh boy. Oh, She simply dashed forward, as fast as she possibly could, in order to save him, to keep him from dying. After that brief moment lasting not even a second, filled with thoughts and running, Kay beheld the worst possible outcome. The illumination birthed by the clash of blade and thunderbolt made me stumble forward. Not only had I been so focused that I'd forgotten Shiro was planning something, I wasn't far-sighted enough to be able to adapt to suddenly losing my vision either. Achieving a composed and ever-serene mind was no easy feat. Until a short while ago, I'd been no more than an everyday student. There was no way I would have been able to keep my cool after being so abruptly robbed of my sight. A series of floor-shaking tremors and a burst of explosive fire put an end to my confusion. That was likely Sakurai's doing. Whatever she had done gave me a momentary flash of vision. I couldn't move an inch. That momentary hesitation brought a swift end to my perfectly timed plan. His lightning would fall upon and pierce me through, just as I yielded to Cain's overwhelming pressure and envisioning that hopelessly inevitable outcome. Gunfire rang out again, soon followed by the sound of a small-scale explosion. For some reason, Cain's presence vanished as a result. Or rather, it felt more like the giant was bewildered and impatient, as if he had lost sight of my position. Maybe Sister Lisa couldn't see me right now? My suspicion turned to conviction a moment later. The lightning strike that should have hit and blown me away ended up passing right by me. I had no idea what had just happened. None of that mattered, though. What did matter was that my opponent had just missed an attack that would have otherwise been fatal. Regardless of what brought it about, this was my chance. I would have been an idiot for not taking advantage of it. I sprung my arms forward and sped up my body's muscles in sync. I raised my blade with all my might as fast as I could and moved to slice the giant before me in two. My target was the head. That was the only way. I didn't know if you could kill a corpse twice, but I baselessly believed that this decapitating blade Marie dwelt in could kill any target regardless of what the rules of logic dictated. It was likely that belief that was acting as the driving force behind manifesting my Arneb's power to its peak. As long as I believed that, this guillotine could cut down whatever stood in its path, be it human or monster. Cain turned around. I couldn't tell if it was a random attack or if this dead freak possessed the base ability to intercept by himself, but either way, I was faster. I jumped up as if to land on the swinging lump of iron, then launched an attack on the giant's completely defenseless and exposed neck. But something completely unbelievable happened a moment later. Cain headbutted the blade swinging down towards his neck. I didn't know how strong the bastard's mask, that is, Sister Lisa's Arnerb, was, but my blade's swing went way off the mark from that superhuman counterattack. As a result, I missed and ended up cutting from Cain's left shoulder blade to his right lung. That'd be a fatal wound for sure to a normal opponent, but it didn't look like it had much effect on the freak. In other words, it was a misfire. My all-or-nothing attack had been completely wasted. Yet it wasn't bitterness or regret I felt, but something else entirely. That last counterattack was on a different level to get altogether. He deliberately attacked to offset the slash heading right for him, and he actually used his mask to deflect it. A mere puppet couldn't have pulled that off. What in the world was this thing? Two-Ball Cain casually turned around with no heed to the diagonal wound in his body. Not even a drop of blood poured from the wound, and he clearly didn't feel any pain. So he had the body of a corpse no matter how you spun it. Despite that, he moved precisely even when he was cut off from Sister Lisa's proper commands. It's speaking. The corpse that had remained silent up until then began to speak. It was a dark, gear-like creaking that lacked any meaning, more reminiscent of the rumble of a motor than a genuine human voice. However, that eerie enumeration of sounds, hardly even worthy to be called a voice, made my entire body freeze up. I wanted him to stop. I didn't want to hear another syllable uttered by that voice. The dead giant's voice alone was enough to instill a sort of madness in the living. His howl, loud as roaring thunder, completely blew my fighting spirit into smithereens. Lisa quietly clicked her tongue when she heard Cain's war cry. It appears that his true nature, one that she'd wanted to keep hidden, was coming dangerously close to being revealed. That was dangerous, and not just because it would make him harder to control. Lisa could not afford letting anyone learn that Cain possessed a side like that to him. And if worst came to worst, if the divine vessel or Samiel ever found out, they'd likely demolish everything. Same went for that girl, though in a different way. She cut through the smokescreen of foam and chased after the girl a second behind. She couldn't have been allowed to see that. If she did, then she'd surely... But it was too late. Kay was already watching. She stood frozen and dumbfounded, muttering to herself like her mind was somewhere else. Anger welled up within Kay a moment later. It seemed she was more fixated on Cain's wound than his maddened roars. Though Lisa hesitated to call it a silver lining, she had nothing to worry about if that was the thing that had Kay bothered. Cain wouldn't break that easily. She was about to say that, but for some reason she couldn't. He was a dead puppet. Even if his arms were chopped off, his legs vanished, or his chest was filled with holes, that monster was a lump of flesh that could keep moving as long as she, the controller, remained in good health. As such, there was nothing to worry about. That wound could barely even be called a cut. Lisa attempted to say all of that, even parted her lips a few times, but ultimately she couldn't. Inevitably, she could do nothing to stop that impending instrument of destruction. Cain swung down his lump of iron with all his might, unleashing a burst of deadly lightning rivaling that of Indra himself, eclipsing all his prior attacks in terms of ferocity. His strike was powerful enough to blow away everyone still alive in this place, not only Ren, Shiro, and Ellie, but even Kay and Lisa as well. The flash of lightning burned into my eyes, blinding me. The scope of Cain's raging lightning strike dwarfed all the others. No, they're World War II uniforms. We're fighting Nazis. You're not missing anything. You're spot on. Those are World War II uniforms. We're fighting Nazis. The scope of Cain's raging lightning strike dwarfed all others that came before. Even I would have been torn to shreds had I taken a direct hit from it. I knew that all too well. Yet in spite of that, I couldn't bring myself to move an inch. Rather than being frozen by the sheer magnitude of that unparalleled destructive power, it was more like I was cursed by this freak's existence itself. I'd be seeing the pearly gates in my near future if this kept up. For some reason, Sakurai cut in between us. That was what saved me. The floor shook with a tremendous sound, splitting apart along with the walls, while I found myself blown back a dozen or so meters. As the echoes of destruction continued to roar, I saw something fall to my feet. It was Sakurai. Needless to say, she was all battered and wounded from Cain's attack. Even she would have been blown to bits had she taken a direct hit. Nonetheless, she seemed to have evaded that outcome by a hair's breadth, stopping the blow a split second before it would have dealt a fatal wound. She still suffered severe injuries, but her life was seemingly spared. More importantly, though, I highly doubted she was attempting to save me. In which case, could she have been trying to rein in the berserk Cain? That last attack unleashed all his power, from what I could tell. Releasing that volume of destructive force must have taken quite a toll on him. There was also the wound I inflicted on him to consider. In that state, it would have been hardly surprising to see his body crumple apart from the power of his own lightning. When I thought of it that way, Sakurai's actions became more comprehensible. But why would someone like her, who had always been so cool-headed when dealing with Wilhelm and Rusalka, risk her life to that extent, and for that monster's sake, no less? Oh, what's this? All those thoughts were abruptly drowned out by intense pain flaring up in my neck. The air grew heavy and stagnant as an indescribable kind of unease filled the room. What was that? Oh, the third swastika's been opened. I could vaguely make out Sister Lisa across the dust shrouding the room. Right next to her stood Cain, having returned to being a speechless statue. Oh, so now that the third swastika has opened, she's got an excuse to leave. So we don't all die. The opening of the swastika meant that many had died. That last attack, as well as the battle up to that point, she must have passed the necessary death quota. though I was gritting my teeth in rage and bitterness. Sister Lisa ignored it all. There was a twinge of pain in her voice. Perhaps she too had been
レ
wounded.
オン、その子のことをよろしくお願い。
Take care
難
of
しい性
Leon.
格だけど、根は悪い子でもないはずだから。
待て
Take her with you.
じゃあ、さようなら。
No, don't leave Leon
心
Hart
配
with
しなくて
me.
も、私たちはもうあなたの前に現れないわ。これで仕事は
No.
終わったのよ。
シスタ
No, 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 no. I screamed and stretched my hand out, but I couldn't reach her. My legs and hips, still suffering the after effects of the lightning, wouldn't let me stand. I wanted her to stay, not leave. I was begging her. She and Himuro
ごめ
were...
んなさい。でも、許してなんて言えないわね、願わくは。あなたも生きて。
Please don't leave me with Leon Hart, please. A jet black curtain blanketed my vision at that moment. The black cloth attached to Cain's mask spread out, covering the whole floor, drowning everything out.
Oh.
A moment later, my sight returned, revealing that Sister Lisa and Cain were nowhere to be found. In addition, all the splattered blood, chunks of meat, and mountains of corpses had vanished without a trace. It was just like that night, the way Rusalka erased the mutilated body without a trace the night that I met her, Wilhelm, and Sakurai. In other words...
食ったか来る時も帰る時も派手だな。おい、
白
He lived through that
で
explosion?
もまあとりあえずこの場は命拾ったね。正直しょっぱなからデタラメなの来すぎっつうか。どうなのさこれ。
You know, let me tell you, what I think is really cool about this is that they gave Shiro, the bro character, a romantic interest to be all, you know, buddy with. I just think that's very neat. I think these two are adorable. I think they're great. But also, all my energy's gone. That fight drained me. Honjo, she survived as well.
で立てるかレン。見るからにひでえけど死んじまうほどでもねえんだろ。
I couldn't stand right now, but my injuries weren't life-threatening. I didn't know how these two got away, but other than being covered in dust from head to toe, they didn't seem to be wounded. But then I remembered something.
白お前な
なんだよ。
涼しい顔して笑ってんじゃねえよ。お前がいきなり照明なんか消したおかげでこっちは危うく死にかけたぞ。
ああそれやったの私。
ちなみに俺の発案な。
だからそういうことじゃなくてだな。
I was about to tell him that he should have given me a heads up or show a bit more concern, but I stopped myself. Anything I told him would have gone in one ear and out the other anyway.
ま生きてたんだからいいじゃんよ。
ああおかげさまでな。
I leaned against the wall and somehow managed to stand up as anger welled within me. The crowds of people here just a while ago were all gone, leaving no one but me and these guys. Some probably got away, but everyone who saw what happened had been wiped out. I couldn't help but feel bitter at that.
俺がここにいたからとかつまんないこと考えちゃダメよ。あちらさんはこの場所に用があったわけだから、あたしらやレン君がいようがいまいが。
ま後悔しても仕方ね
Oh
えしな。
god, the school is a swastika, isn't it? Just like this place.
ほんとよく言うよねあんたって。
Shiro and Honjo said that as if they could tell what I've been feeling. They may have been right, but I couldn't just simply write off the whole thing.
とにかくこういう時は悪者の退治に意識を向けるのが前向きな姿勢ってやつでしょ。そういうわけで一つ問題。
Honjo pointed her finger and looked at me. I was hoping it was just my imagination, but it looked like I couldn't laugh this off.
これどうするよ。
No, no. It went without saying that she was pointing at Sakurai, still unconscious on the floor. No. No, that was indeed a problem, a big problem in fact. I felt like we'd been left with a rabid dog or something. Yes. No. 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 Absolutely not. Absolutely not. I refuse. I refuse.
ぶっ殺せよレン。
Yes.
俺の仲間の
Yes,
敵だぞ
Shiro, yes.
とバカは言ってるわけだけど、
Yes, Shiro, you and I are of one mind. Let's kill her right now. Let's kill her
真
right
面目な
now.
話、連中がどうやら死ぬの
Just
かってことに
decapitate her
興
with
味がある。
Marie.
おい
I instinctively rebutted that turbulent statement, but I could see where Shiro was coming from. I had to keep fighting these monsters from now on. I had Maria's means to do that, but these two had no way of beating them. Oh, using her like a test to see what ways a mortal could kill one of these guys. However,
人体実験でもしようってのかよ。趣味悪いぞお前。
no, it would work. It would totally work. It would be helpful. Do it. Do it. Make her your human guinea pig. Experiment with methods of execution on her to see what sticks. Please do this. Please do this thing. I didn't want to do or see the kind of stuff Rusalka got off to. Shiro let out an exasperated snicker as he saw my reaction.
まあな、お前はそう言うだろうな。傷んでるやつに甘いっつうか、フェアプレー精神の人だから。
Fair play.
あんたの頭も相当傷んでる領域だと思うけど。
お前、そりゃ、そのなんつうか、どうなんだよ。
どんなもこんなもあるかよ。
These guys were idiots. They seriously went back to their normal selves right after the bloodshed ended. Anyway, trying to go along with them was a waste of time. I had to think about how to deal with the situation.
とりあえずここで桜井を確保できたのは運がいいと。そう思う。
Call it naive, but killing someone wounded and defenseless was too low for me. And seeing how I couldn't bring myself to do that, I had only one option available. After all, there was still much we didn't
捕
know.
まえて捕虜にしよ
Yes, interrogate,
こいつには聞き
interrogate,
たいこと
torture
も
and
あるし。
interrogate, experiment.
へえ。
う。なんだよ。
What was up with those mocking looks they were
お
giving
前
me?
さ、こいつのおかげで命拾いしたから交換とか持っちゃってるわけ？
そんなわけないだろ。むしろ苦手だこいつのことは。
A cat and a dog.
それはまた微妙な評価を。
I really wish she'd just shut up and leave me alone.
誤解がないように言っとくけど、俺はこいつと仲良くなんかないからな。最初っからどうも馬が合わないんだよ桜井とは。
Which was exactly why I couldn't deal with her. She didn't seem like the type I could get along with. I knew those words were illogical and not much of an explanation, but that was what I said. Shiro waved his hands as if to say, yeah, I get it.
まあ、お前が得意な相手なんてバカスミくらいしかいねえしな。
Yes, I very much prefer Bakasumi. I much prefer Kasumi. Thank you, please.
Okay.
Please give me
俺は別に
Kasumi.
構わんよ。シャレでからかっただけだ。そう怒んな。てなわけで、おいエリー。
ああ、はいはい。わかってるよ。
Honjo gave a sluggish reply before sitting next to Sakurai. Personality aside, she was still the daughter of doctors and probably had at least basic knowledge in first aid treatment.
悪いけど任せる。
But the lights in the hall went out just as soon as I said that, wrapping the place in darkness. After a beat, Shiro lit up the surroundings with the flame of his lighter.
なんだ？停電かよ。
さっきの戦闘で電気系統のどっかが行かれたのかも。
おい大丈夫なのか。
まあ大丈夫だと思うけど、詳しいことは調べてみないとわかんないね。そんなことより、とりあえずこの子の治療する方が優先だと思うけど。
She was right. There was no way to treat Sakurai properly in complete darkness.
じゃ、まずは場所を変えよっか。あんたたち、この子を運びな。
Where else can we even go? Shiro and I followed Honjo's orders and carried Sakurai to a VIP room. Ah, just another room.
これでいいかな。
Once we got permission, Shiro and I left the hallway we'd been waiting in and entered the VIP room. Actually, hold on.
これでいいかな。
I mean, Sakurai is a heroine.
あんたたち、もう入ってきてもいいよ。
Yeah, I know. I missed it the first time. Foolish me. I missed that voice line. Sakurai is technically a heroine, so she must have a redemption arc. But I don't like her. We will see if that. We will see if that changes. Once we got permission, Shiro and I left the hallway we've been waiting in, and entered the VIP room. Honjo beckoned us over to the sofa where Sakurai was sleeping. I came forward, taking a closer look at her. She was wrapped up in bandages and covered by a
もう
blanket.
大丈夫なのか。
まあとりあえずはね。
なんか問題あんのかよ。
怪我はもう大丈夫だと思う。びっくりするほど早く塞がってるから。
Oh, you're shooting
た
me.
だ出血がひどくて体が冷え切っちゃってる。なんとか温めてやんなきゃまずいんだけど。
なんとかならないのか。
つうか、お前が温めてやりゃいいんじゃね
Oh, you're kidding me.
はあ
This really wasn't the time for jokes.
それいいね。レン君、一緒に寝て温めてあげてよ。
Are
も
you...
ちろん裸で
Don't
ね。
even joke. Don't even. The hell.
こういうのは言い出しっぺがやるもんだろ。こいつを捕虜にしようって言ったのはお前だし、それにこの女が目覚めて暴れたりした時に止
You
められるのは
can't
お
do
前だ
this
けだ
to
ろ。
me, game.
私は電気系統の普及もしないといけないし、レン君だってシローに任せるより自分でやった方が安心。
They were definitely enjoying this. I was starting to feel a headache descend upon me.
本当なのか。
何が？
その血が足らないとか体温とかそういう話。
ええ、低体温症を
Oh,
起こ
you're
しかけて
kidding me.
このまま外気に体温吸われてたら。
There's no way that Kei Sakurai is suffering from hypothermia. Ellie is deliberately making this up to screw with Ren. Honjo didn't seem to be lying, but could Sakurai really just freeze to death like that? Even with all the stuff she found out, the physical limits of those bastards remained a complete mystery to me. To us. Still, it would have been one more thing to bother me at nights if I overestimated Sakurai and accidentally left her die on my watch now that I decided to save her. I seriously regretted the fact that I lacked the resolve to be able to just let her die without batting an eye. Jesus Christ.
わかったよ。
I was being too soft for my own good. God damn it, I couldn't believe these guys were still playing games where people's lives were on the line.
じゃ決まりだ。なーに、安心しろって。俺らは邪魔にならねえようにどっか別んとこ行ってっからよ。
そうだね。それじゃあレン君、あとは任せたよ。ちゃんと裸になって
That is you.
温めてあげなきゃ
He
ダメ
doesn't
だよ。
have. He doesn't have to. He'll like body heat will come through clothes. I'm gonna save because this seems pretty bye. Oh boy. Oh mortals. Oh no.
一応相手は病人なんだからあんまり激しくしちゃダメだ。一応相手は病人なんだから。
She could just take her juvenile advice and shove it. I thought about yelling that, but Honjo had already shut the door.
マジでやるしかないのか。
Questioning the importance of getting thoroughly naked, I initially figured I'd only take my shirt off. But Sakurai herself was almost completely undressed, so that would have made no sense on my part. Ren, that's not the kind of logic you apply in this situation, you dummy. Damn, if she woke up in the middle of this, she'd kill me for sure. Is that not what you should be afraid of? I wasn't really against fighting Sakurai, but I still felt hesitant. Why did this sort of thing have to happen here?
お前目覚ますなよ。
I laid Sakurai on my knees and wrapped the blanket around us as I prayed for both our sakes. As I did my best not to look at things I had no business looking at, I kept telling myself that there was no other solution to this messed up situation than waiting for morning to come. Or at least I endeavored to do the best I could.
何の因果で。
How did we get from that hellish bloodbath to this ridiculous situation? In fact, why didn't Sister Lisa take Sakurai with her to begin with? The reason I decided to help her was largely because the words Sister Lisa left me with before she vanished really stuck with me. She asked me to take care of Leon, but did she kind of forget the part where we were trying to kill each other? It would have been much easier if she just told me to spare her or kill her. I was having a hard time turning down a request when she asked me in that voice of hers. Maybe she was counting on my naive side. And while it was true it might have been a factor, maybe there was more to it than that. In other words, I didn't think she was being cunning or that she had darker intentions. To be frank, she probably trusted me. Considering where we both stood, I doubted it was something to feel honored by, nor something I was meant to live up to, but damn it, this was all just such a pain in the
大
ass.
体根は悪い子じゃないとか言われてもな。
I looked down at Sakurai's face as I grumbled. Well, from this angle, I could definitely only see her as just another girl of Kasumi's age. Come to think of it, several people, herself included, told me that we were the same age, didn't they? The Longinus Dreisen Orden, remnants of the Nazis. Whether or not this was true, and whether Rusalka had really lived 10 times longer than us or not, even if that was no more than an exaggeration, those bastards had to be over 80 years old at the least. From our point of view, that'd make them old enough to be the same age as our great-grandparents, so why was it that they didn't mind having such a kid in their ranks, and a Japanese one at that? I knew that Japan and Germany were allies back in World War II, so maybe there was some sort of connection back then. But regardless, Sakurai still stuck out like a sore thumb among them. In fact, it didn't look like Wilhelm accepted her as a comrade at all, though it felt like he had a real grudge against her, like he was embarrassed by the whole matter. So why did Sakurai enroll in an organization she clearly couldn't be comfortable working with? I'd simply viewed her as an obstacle that had to be taken out up to this point, but now that I thought about all that, she could be in some sort of sticky situation. That said, by no means was that a sign I could let my guard down around her, or hold back. This seemed to be trickier than I thought. Much like Honjo had said, Sakurai really was freezing. On top of that, she was just too delicate and fragile. Thanks to her current bewildering impression of vulnerability, the image I'd had of her up to this point, in other words, one of a stone-carted bitch, was loudly crumbling apart. I found myself starting to honestly want to help her. Jeez. I couldn't blame Shiro and Honjo for making fun of me. I really was a naive dumbass being controlled by trivial emotions. I knew just how dangerous she was, but... Sakurai let out a low groan. She sniffed slightly and began muttering in delirium. She muttered meaningless, incoherent fragments at first, but it didn't take long for her to start saying things I could understand. Oh boy. I didn't know that there was gonna be a sprite for this. Well, this is Bandages and Bedsheets Sakurai. Enjoy. And 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
ごめんなさい。私が子供だから許してお願い許してください。絶対私があなたのことを許して。
The indescribable regret in Sakurai's delirium spread to me. Sakurai, completely defenseless, spoke in a childish voice and tone befitting her age. I knew there was nothing I could do about eavesdropping on her given the circumstances, but it still felt like I was doing something reprehensible. At the very least, I sure as hell wouldn't want our positions to be reversed. Everyone has their own little secrets they'd rather never bring up, and learning those secrets and exposing them was nothing but bad taste. Hell, to someone as proud as her, it would have been a huge disgrace to have others learn about those things when she wasn't aware of it. In my mind, that was more embarrassing than being seen naked. Not to mention, I was actually seeing her naked right now. Damn it, I really had gotten myself into a huge steaming mess. I knew I couldn't empathize with those psychos, but that didn't mean I could just throw her to the dogs. Sakurai, who knew nothing of my worries, or her spilling her secrets, continued muttering in delirium.
勝つから負けないから待っててお願いもう少しきっとまた会えるからみんな一緒に3人で
She had her own trio. I assume like how Ren has Shiro and Kasumi.
Beatrice.
Ooh. That's Valkyrie. That's Valkyrie, isn't it? Valkyrie. That's the dead member of the round table that she's replaced. Though I tried not to listen, I couldn't avoid hearing what she was saying at such a close distance. As such, I unconsciously reacted to that last thing she said. I'd heard that name somewhere before. I slowly pulled it out of my vague
それ
memories.
からベアトリス・キルヒアイゼンはもう死んでるみたいで、
その抜け番が桜井圭。こいつらが高額の賞金首だってことは OK？
Right, I'd forgotten the whole thing in the chaos of Kain's attack, but I had heard that name from Honjo shortly before that. Beatrice Kerheisen. I didn't know how long ago this was, but she was a deceased member of the LDO, most likely Sakurai's predecessor. Sakurai was probably initiated into the Obsidian Round Table to replace that Beatrice woman after her death, which meant they probably knew each other. Actually, they were probably more than just acquaintances. For Sakurai to mutter her name while unconscious and seriously injured meant she must have been someone important. Or so I figured. Were they friends? Or something more? My obsessive speculation was interrupted by a sudden change in Sakurai's condition. Her slender body started shaking more than it had before. She began to writhe. She was in pain. No worse. In pure agony. It seemed like something other than her wounds was causing it. I didn't know what it was, but it felt like something far more dangerous than simple injuries. Oh, the stigmata. The oath. What happened to her? Sakurai clung to me, her nails digging into my shoulder. She gripped me so hard she actually tore into my flesh, causing me to start bleeding. It hurt like hell, but I was more confused than anything. What had happened to her body, and what was she trying to do? It was already clear that her wounds went behind it. Several seconds passed as I wondered what to do when... Sakurai stopped moving with a quiet groan. I could no longer worry about shame or guilt. I ripped off the blanket and looked over the body to find the source of her sudden agony. And then I found... a sinister tattoo located directly under Sakurai's navel. On her womb. Ah, so the additional stigmata has taken the form of, I guess it would be a womb tattoo. No, it wasn't a tattoo. The decapitation scar on my neck began to ache. It looked like a tattoo at first, but that wasn't it. It was something way more dangerous, something alive. It looked like one design-wise. The crimson scorpion crawled across Sakurai's skin in sync with her wild panting. The scorpion slowly, yet surely moved downwards. It gnashed its tusks, raised its claws, and reveled in the sadism it inflicted on its prey. Sickening, human-like emotions emanated from the silent, two-dimensional being. Was it trying to devour Sakurai? I didn't know exactly what it was, but once I realized the thing was malicious in its intent, I began weighing my options. What was I to do? Sakurai would likely die if I left her be. Shiro would probably call this convenient since it would mean one less enemy to deal with, but I couldn't be so cold. Beating them in a fight was one thing, but leaving someone to suffer in such agony was just... Especially someone in such a weak state as her. And though I hated to admit it, now that she'd touched a corner of my heart, I couldn't just abandon her like it was nothing. I'd become just as messed up as those bosses, if I did. I had to remember why I was doing this in the first place. The entire reason I've been in this kill or be killed scenario is because I wanted to protect my day-to-day life, starting with Kasumi. And the me from those days would never choose to abandon a dying person. If I let Sakurai die, I'd be beyond the point of no return. And that was the reason why I... Yeah, bye. Suppress the tattoo. Suppress the tattoo. It was the only way. I didn't know if I could do it or not, but Sakurai had once managed to suppress my nigh uncontrollable destructive impulses. All I could do was imitate what she'd done. Sakurai was at degree level 3, while I was at degree level 2. It seemed impossible when I considered that, but it was likely that the tattoo had nothing to do with her Arnab anyway. I had attained the Yetzira degree. Did I have enough power to beat this scorpion curse? That was the basic problem. Though it was impossible for Sakurai, considering she was probably getting devoured from the inside out, even a novice like me could probably do it from the outside. I resolved myself. I put my left hand on top of my right, then placed them on the scorpion tattoo. It was hot, extremely so. I could feel the pulsing of the scorpion from my right hand on Sakurai's abdomen. Get out of my way. Move your hand. Do you want me to devour you? The malicious hint of a voice passed through my right hand, echoing in my skull. So it really was alive. Its fight was with me. I didn't know what it was, but I wouldn't have some scumbag butting in. This goddamn thing wasn't gonna get away with a threat like that. I felt the pain run through my right hand at almost the same time I had those thoughts. The crimson scorpion that had been nothing but a flat 2D object up until then pinched my right pinky with its claws. I grimaced at the pain that reached all the way to my bones, but it was no problem. Why else would I have used my right hand? I'd predicted that it would resist in some occultish way, and there was no way such shoddy claws could have cut through the soul that dwelled in my right arm. I let it do whatever it wanted for about a dozen seconds or so. Then when I felt the scorpion grow impatient and tired, I focused all my will. No, this was an order that allowed for no defiance. In other words, sleep! The claws let go of my finger and the pulsing scorpion under my hand ceased its crawling. Seemed like I had pulled it off. I initially wanted to order the thing to vanish, but as disordered as it may have been, it was a being dwelling within Sakurai's body. I was afraid that if I made it vanish, it would have taken a few organs with it. That would have most likely been fatal to Sakurai, and certainly not the end that I wished for her. She was no longer in pain, her breathing slowly evening out in her sleep. Well, I figured I could relax for now. She'd saved me several times till now, albeit not exactly out of sheer goodwill, and I ended up overhearing several of her secrets. She might not have liked it, but with this, I considered my debt repaid. I wouldn't retreat, and Sakurai herself must have had her own goals too. If those ended up conflicting, we'd have no choice but to fight again, and if it came to that, then I at least wanted to get all unnecessary debts out of the way now, so I wouldn't have any baggage later on. I hope she wouldn't get mad, or wake up. I placed her on my knees and wrapped the blanket around us, deciding to wait for morning to come. Ooh, very nice. That's beautiful, isn't it? It was raining. A woman without an umbrella stood on the bridge, accompanied by a grotesque giant. It was Lisa Brenner and Tubal Cain. Instead of heading straight back after the battle at the club, they went to the bridge. The ocean echoed with the sound of pouring rain. It was hail. The temperature was dropping.
まるで語り葉のムチ打ち。
Lisa mocked herself, well aware that this would be nowhere near enough to wipe away her sins. She wanted to go somewhere devoid of people, thus she ended up here. She had been betting that there were few who had come to this place so late on such a rainy night. Indeed, there were no signs of anyone else. How long had she been there? She'd been exposing herself to the rain for a long time, her hair and clothes already soaked. However, she merely gazed at the shining city in the distance with her paying mind to that sensation clinging to her skin.
そういえばクリスマスが近いのね。
She'd forgotten about it, even though it meant a certain girl's very important birthday. Or had she simply been trying not to think about it? She had feared to test it and yet also awaited the coming of that day. Inconsistent emotions whirled about in her heart. What was she thinking? What did she wish for? What was she doing here? Her job was over. She had completed her mission, followed her orders, and fulfilled her oath. The only thing left to do was sit it out and wait. She had grown tired of waiting and hoping these past 60 years. Yet now that she'd accomplished what she needed to do, all Lisa felt was fear, regret, and impatience. Would her wish be granted? Would everything she'd lost come back to her? Or would she end up losing something else in return?
情けない。いい年をして。
Nasakanai. Superhumans who had lived for centuries often appeared in fiction. They were transcendental and had left all ordinary worries and worldly desires far behind them. Lisa thought that was all a lie. She had lived over 90 years, lost nearly everyone from her generation, and butchered people by the scores. Yet in spite of that, she ironically felt no sense of transcendental enlightenment. Much like her aging had stopped in her late 20s, her mind hadn't matured at all either, still that of a young woman. Oh right, so since Lisa's on their team, I just realized there's more than a 20-year age gap between her and Ren. When I said 20 years earlier, like way earlier in the stream, that was an underestimation. Ever since that time, she had simply gone with the flow, not knowing what to do, almost like an awkwardly spinning weather vane. A young child had called her a hypocrite, and she couldn't deny it. She couldn't succumb to madness from her own will and desires, or build up a firm position like her peers did. She felt lost constantly. That sensation led to worrying. Those worries caused her to go with the flow. At this rate, others would simply keep on using her.
あなたもそうね。
Her words, laden with a hint of self-mockery, were aimed at the giant standing next to her. He was a soulless machine, a weapon. All she could do was laugh at the irony of him being controlled by yet another worthless puppet such as herself.
あなたはそうじゃなければいいと私は。
Now that she thought about it, was it wrong to do what she did to save her? Is that what he felt? She wondered how the giant felt about her.
よければ聞かせてちょうだい、カイン。いいえ、
But right as she was about to speak his true name,
風邪をひきますよ、リザ。
surprised by the abrupt voice from behind her, Lisa turned around to face its source.
ああ、失礼。驚かすつもりはなかったのですが、申し訳ありません。
バレリア。
Christoph, the divine vessel, the priest addressed Lisa by her real name, a favor the nun returned by doing the same.
風邪なんてひかないわよ。冗談がきついわ。
いや、まあそう言わずとも。何にせよ今のあなたは自虐的な行為にふけっていると感じたので。
自虐？
違いますかな？
違うということもないでしょうね、実際に。
Triva stroked his chin as he walked towards, or rather right past, Lisa.
バレリア。
まずはご苦労。大義ですと言いましょうか。あなたのおかげで第3のスワス地下は問題なく開きました。礼を言います。
礼なんて。
She didn't need it. Besides, it made no sense for him to thank her. Normally, she would have voiced those opinions.
あ
However,
なたは何をしているの？
いえ、ただ少し妙な拍の動きを感じたものでね。時間にしてあれはスワス地下が開く直前であったでしょうか。どうも私しかそれを感じることはなかったらしい。まあベイはどうだかわかりませんが、マレウスが何も言わないので単なる気のせいということもあるでしょう。もしくは私のみが感じたことに何か意味があるのかと。
それであなたは一体何を？
ですからそれを確かめに。
そこで？
ええ。
he voiced his answer casually, still standing before the silent giant. The priest's towering frame was over 190 centimeters tall, yet he still looked no more than a child next to Cain. With an even shorter Lisa next to them, the picture resembled a cartoonish composition with no sense of
静
scale.
かですね。おとなしい。おお、負傷しているようですが、すでに傷も合わさりかけている。大したものだ。
Though Cain couldn't move if Lisa was dead, Trifa was still quite calm in the face of that massive violence and destruction. Though Cain couldn't move if Lisa was dead, Trifa was still quite calm in the face of that massive violence and destruction. Lisa felt indescribable chills down her spine when she noticed the look on Trifa's face. Just as Kay had said, Cain was undoubtedly the strongest weapon in the Obsidian Round Table's current armory, with Bay coming in second. She could declare that with certainty. But this priest, his powers she could not gauge or even understand. Contrary to his kind and fragile appearance, the oppressive and wicked presence silently emanated by the man felt far from normal. Though they'd known each other for a long time, Lisa had only seen this Trifa, this far up close, a few times in the past. As such, there was one fact about them that she had nearly forgotten, one she had dismissed as her imagination or a mere misunderstanding. Valeria Trifa, the divine vessel, was not the strongest of the Obsidian Round Table, but he was the most dreaded.
時にリザ、あなたは迷っておられますね。
He's dreaded. Just then, the priest stopped looking up at Cain and turned back to Lisa. Oddly enough, the wicked aura that lingered about him had vanished.
仕事を終え、あとは待つのみ。もともと暴れ好きでもないあなただ。それは結構だし、止めません。だが、このカインはまだ動かしたいと思うのですよ。いかがですかな？
どうして？
Lisa spoke in the calmest voice she could
なぜ
muster.
まだ彼を使いたがるの？手が足りないというわけでもないでしょう。
それについては順序を追って。まずはあなたの悩みのことを。
Lisa raised an eyebrow at Trifa's attitude. Though he was talking, it sounded more like the priest was asking for permission to complain to her. However, he paid no heed to her and
あ
continued.
なたの悩み、その迷い、口にせずともわかります。私には妻も子供もいます。大事でしょうし、大事です。そうはかけがえのないぬくもりだ。たとえ悪鬼羅刹と言われる身でも、故にあなたが抱くその苦悩、胸に迫るほど理解できます。そも葛藤の根源は、 子を抱くために子を殺す。
You must kill the child in order to
矛
hold
盾
it
が
in your
大きす
arms?
ぎてやりきれない。だから選択できずに流される。当たり前ではないですか。リザ、私もまたあなたと同じくテレジアの幸せを願っている。
あなたは
For a moment, Lisa had a hard time understanding what the priest was talking about. Wishing for Teresia's happiness. Indeed, that was correct.
あ
However,
な
it...
たはハイドリヒ教を
あの方は我々ごときの戦慮など副首領閣下もまた同じ。彼らを自分あのお二人にかかれば全てどうでもよいと言われて終わりだ。
Oh, isn't that just nice? Declare everything pointless and that's the end of it. Muda muda muda?
でも
聞きなさいリザ。シュライバー卿にマキナ卿、あの二人もやはり気にはしない。一方は画集の虜で、もう一方はそもそも思考すらしていない。黒煙卓の頂点はひどく存在で、言ってみればおおらかですよ。まあザミエル卿、あの方だけは少々面倒でありますが、それもまた幸運なことに。
The priest's form grew hazy as he stopped mid-sentence.
万一彼女の出陣が起きたとしてもいい取引材料を見つけました。とはいえおそらく今の調子なら必要ないと思いますがね。
Did he just... Trifa punched through Lisa's chest all the way to her breastbone, grabbing her heart and then piercing all the way through her back. He just punched her heart through her back. You can't do this to me, you son of a... You can't do this to me. How dare you? How dare you? I'm left with Leonhardt and you go and kill one of the few older women in this game, you sack of excrement?
慈悲ですよリザ。
I'm gonna kill you, Trifa. I'm going to make you writhe in agony. I will make your existence a living nightmare from which you can awake, but you will not. You will remain in a slumber of pure pain, torture, and agony, writhing. Every second of every minute of every day you will wish and beg for death, and it will not come! I'm not happy about this. The priest caught her falling body as though he were embracing her, then spoke in a voice laden with affection.
本音を言えば邪魔ということになるのですが、それでも慈悲であることに変わりはない。これから先起こる未来、あなたは知らぬ方が身のためだ。
I'm so shook I've been forgetting to narrate. Hold on. Her vision grew blurry. Blood gushed out of Lisa as her immortal body began to crumble. The annihilation of an apostle carried out with one's bare hands. There were only two members of the Obsidian Round Table who could pull that off. Machina and Valeria Trifa. In her confusion and despair, it hit Lisa again that it was undoubtedly the priest, her comrade, who would have caused this situation and was sending her body towards death's embrace.
バレリア、あなたはレアを
救いますよ。それは誓って。あの子に性質など使わせない。そしてあなたの望みも私の望みもやはり必ず叶えてみせる。神かけて誓いましょう。
She sensed a terrible contradiction in his words. There was no way he
でき
could.
ますよ。可能です。あなたと私は同類だが、決定的に違うところが一つ。共に惑い、悩み、揺れに揺れ、苦しいほど葛藤する。それは確かにそうでしょう。だがしかし、私は行動に移すのです。何度でも何度でも。失えば取り戻す。取り戻してまた奪う。不毛であろうが矛盾であろうが、私はそれをためらわない。リザ、あなたは優しい人だ。この狂った天秤には耐えられないし、テレジアと計りにかけて私が選んだものはすなわち。
The priest dared not say the rest. He merely pulled his arm out while still holding onto the nun's heart.
さようなら、リザ・ブレンナー。さようなら、我が愛しき同胞。あなたは私が嫌いでしょうが、私はあなたが好きでしたよ。テレジアが娘なら、あなたは妻であり妹だったと言われたところで迷惑千万でしょうがね。これは偽りのない真実です。ですから。
Once he finished watching the nun's body fade away, turn to ash, and wash away with the rain, the priest turned to the giant next to him.
あなたの遺産は私がもらい受けましょう。ほう、やはり思った通り、彼女が朽ちてもこれは消えぬ。
Lisa Brenner's honor, the terrible mask upon the face of that wretch of a giant, remained
これ
intact.
が残っている限り、多少精度が落ちたところで他のものにもカインは使える。そしてな。
The priest stared intently at the brusque lump of iron wielded by the giant, then sounded a
カ
laugh.
インの処置はお好きなようにと確かに昔言いましたが、まさかこう来るとは思いませんでしたよ。リザ、私が憎いですか。
The priest addressed the giant by a certain name, its syllables lost in the hiss of the pouring rain. Nonetheless, its mask began to tremble and creak. The giant clattered its teeth like a starved demon as it faced the priest with contempt, cursing him with almost palpable bloodlust. The rage and fury exuding from his body were certainly not those of a mere puppet. Ignoring the giant's reaction, the priest simply walked by its towering frame.
戻りなさい。
I'm
カイン
just so mad!
戻ってそう。
Ah,
マレウスのところへでも行けばよい。彼女ならば今のあなた、従前とはいかぬまでも使
I'm
用してくれる
steaming
でしょう。
silently, mortals.
私はこれからリザを弔わなければいけません。
Cain proceeded forward in complete silence, his will to resist fierce enough to rend the very bedrock beneath his feet. Feeling the giant stare on his back, Tree for Two began his gait forward, ever ahead. Clutched in the hands behind his back was Lisa's still beating heart.
もう少しだけ辛抱していてください、リザ。ここから近い場所といえば遊園地です。あそこならあなたも寂しくないでしょう。昔に何度かテレジアと一緒に出かけたこともありますしね。
Caressed by the touch of ice-cold rain, the two swastikas opened in a single night. With this, their crusade was now half accomplished. He used her to open the fourth swastika! Enraptured by the sweet pain, the priest laughed as he shed crimson tears, rivulets of blood pouring from his stigmata. So, we have Cain is now loose, with Malleus controlling him possibly. Bay is around, Leonhardt is around. Sonnenkind and Christoph Lohengrin I don't think we've seen. But they're in the city at least. Chapter 6, Death Indra, end. Or was it Chapter 7? I forget. This is the end of the free trial. Please purchase Act 1 and Act 2 to enjoy the remainder of Dies Irae. But, so, to explain, basically, everything that I've played up until now is free on Steam. It's the prologue. What they did is they bundled the heroine's roots into something called Act 1 and Act 2, and those are paid DLC for the free game. No. That's just because of the thing. Okay, listen. I did buy the DLC all the way back when I got it. Yeah, that's how they get you in it. The point is that I can, I believe, like, we have to start on a route, and I've got to get that all, you know, configured and set up. But that doesn't matter anyway, because we've been going for 3.5 hours, and we've reached a chapter end point. So I think that this is a good place to stop. So, I hope you all enjoyed Dies Irae Amentes. We'll see about continuing, if I can set it up to continue it next week with hopefully Kasumi's route. If I can get that all, you know, all figured out. The technology of DLC is blah, blah, blah. But yes, I hope you enjoyed the stream. It was honestly it's always very fun for me to do these readings. I always want to, like, keep on trucking with them. But, you know, it's just going to be a little corner of my content. But yeah, thank you so much for coming. You've been a wonderful audience, wonderful mortals. And, yes! I'm on Twitch. I just realized I'm on Twitch this week. I was almost just about to do my regular sign-off. But no, it's Twitch. So we are looking for someone to raid. Who is live? Give me my bar. Oh, hey! If my thing is correct, then Miwa Toriyama is live with a Ace Attorney reading, which is, very much... Let's have a look, Let's have a look at this stream. Oh, she's reading it in Russian. There's also Vel, Shirara, and Megabort. What's Shirara doing? Monster Hunter Rise. Well, we raided Vel yesterday, I think. So yeah, let's raid the Migglebort. Let's raid the Migglebort. Let's raid the Migglebort. It's you only live once. We'll send you from one den of insanity to the next. Alright, raid channel. Migglebort. And I just click that. Start raid. And that should, there we are. Now, I don't know, I still haven't, I guess we still haven't, found my signature raid message, or whatever those are, or how that works. Yes, bye-bye, bye-bye. I'll send you all on your way very shortly. So, like I said, don't worry about raid messages or anything like that. Say what you like. You were a wonderful audience. You were a wonderful audience, wonderful mortals. Thank you so much. I do attempt a bit, but like when I ended on YouTube, I always went and had a break immediately after streams. So it's been interesting to see how like people just immediately jump into watching. I like have physical setup to take down from when I do every stream. But anyway, that's neither here nor there. I'll not chatter on. You've been a wonderful audience, wonderful mortals, and I hope you all have a good rest of your day, or just a good rest. Farewell, and have fun in the next stream.